All right, this, every day. The time is now 5:38 on Wednesday, September 20th, 2023, and this meeting of the DC State Board of Education will now come to order. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Director Butler, please call the roll.
Representative Williams, Representative Chang, Representative Goulet, Vice President O'Leary,
Here.
Representative Henderson,
Here.
Representative Best, President Thompson,
Present.
Representative Reed,
Present.
Representative Patterson.
Present.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Director Butler. A quorum has been determined, and the State Board will now proceed with the business portion of the meeting. Members, we have a draft agenda before us. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it has been properly moved and seconded. The motion is on the agenda. I ask for the yeas and the nays. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion is approved. We now have the minutes from our August 2nd and September 6th working sessions, the fall board retreat, and the FY 2024 education overview with DME staff. Is there a motion to adopt these minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Perfect. The motion has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, the motion is to adopt these minutes. I will ask again for the yeas and the nays. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The motion is approved. Good evening. My name is Ebony Rose Thompson, and I represent Ward 7 on the State Board of Education. I also serve as the president of the board. On behalf of the DC State Board of Education members, I want to welcome our guests and the viewing public to our public meeting. The State Board plans to continue this in-person posture for our public meetings. The State Board holds its regularly scheduled meetings on the third Wednesday of every month at the Old Council Chambers at 441 4th Street Northwest. This meeting is also being broadcast live via the District Knowledge Network. Before I discuss the items on this evening's agenda, I would like to share a few updates and highlights from the past month. Since we met in July, the State Board held its fall retreat, selected a new slate of students for the 2023-2024 Student Advisory Committee, met with Chairman Mendelson to discuss our upcoming council board breakfast, and engaged with members of the public at a Washington Nationals baseball game. This evening, the State Board will hear from 24 public witnesses. We look forward to hearing from you as you share your testimony on the DC School Report Card design, DC School curriculum, specialized programs, and Safe Passage. We encourage the public to sign up every month to share testimony. As a reminder, sign-up closes 48 hours before the public meeting, and the link can be found at www.sboe.dc.gov. The next public meeting of the State Board will be held on Wednesday, October 18th. At this time, I'd like to turn to our State Superintendent, Dr. Christina Grant for her remarks.
Thank you, President Thompson, Vice President O'Leary, and members of the State Board of Education. Happy back to school. After a month away, I'm pleased to be back with you all this evening, and I'm looking forward to providing you with a lot of updates on a number of shared priorities. It is a new school year, and so it's an amazing opportunity to step back, reflect on what we've accomplished, and focus on all that we have in front of us. I'll begin by talking about student transportation. I'll then provide an update on several shared areas of interest, apologies in advance, but including the DC School Report Card, our literacy task force, those recommendations, and our 2023 statewide assessment results. Finally, I will share an important reminder about DC history. As I reflect on one of our greatest operational challenges through the 2022-23 school year, student transportation continues to be top of mind. We had to step back and completely re-envision how operations were structured, staffed, and run. We focused on streamlining operations, increasing transparency, improving parent communication. We're still facing challenges, and we understand that some of our students and our families continue to experience varied pickup times, longer commutes, and imperfect communications, but I am extremely proud to share that our Division of Transportation Services has experienced the strongest start of school in recent memory. During the first week of school last year, 73% of our buses departed the terminals on time. This year, 98% of our buses departed on time, a 25% improvement mark. We accomplished this despite facing extremely challenging labor supply challenges in this environment. For context, in Louisville, the entire school system shut down during the first week of school due to their bus driver shortage and routing system issues. In Charlottesville, 1,000 students were told they had to transport themselves. In Chicago, half of their bus driver positions remain vacant. In DC, we face similar staffing challenges. We have 6% fewer drivers than we had last year at this time, but we are producing better results because of the aggressive focus and dedication that we have put into route stabilization, system improvements, as well as increased resources for private transportation providers. In addition to performance improvements, we are also excited to share that OSSI will be launching a pilot bus application for our families. The goal of the app will allow our families to view the location of their student's bus during the commute without providing any sensitive information regarding the other students on the bus. We conducted initial testing of the application in July and in August, and we'll be rolling out this app in a family-friendly way in waves as we work to identify and resolve unanticipated hiccups before the entire system is rolled out for every parent using our services. The first group of families who will be piloting this app are those who participated in a previous OSSI Text pilot program. So last year we piloted texting, drivers and attendants texting parents to say, bus is 5 minutes out, bus is downstairs. And we found success, and we want to take that further through this app. The second wave will target families whose students must travel the furthest from DC to get to school. Those are our families that are traveling through the state of Maryland and through the state of Virginia. Subsequently, we anticipate expanding its availabilities to families of our students with shorter commutes. Fun fact, I did a ride-along a couple of weeks ago, and can't invite you all to join, but you definitely learn a lot traveling through the district, getting our kids to and from school. We do need to continue to improve our student transportation services, something I've obviously been very committed to and focused on, but I am pleased to share the progress that we've made to date. I do want to acknowledge Director Michael Riley and our Deputy Superintendent of Operations, Raphael Park, the individuals who are also making a lot of amazing things happen. I'm pleased to share that recently we released our 2023 PARC results to show that students are beginning to recover from the academic decline suffered during the pandemic. This year, ELA scores in the district increased by 2.9 percentage points, and math scores increased by 2.6 percentage points over last year. This does not mean, however, that I'm satisfied with the underlying performance numbers. I know that far too many of our talented and capable young people remain unprepared for college and the college of their choosing. This is particularly true for Black and Latino students and our students who are furthest away from opportunity. OSSI, Mayor Bowser, and the entire educational leadership team across the district retain this fierce urgency of now. We are not contented, nor are we complacent. We know that the historic recovery investments the federal government has made in our nation's education system are coming to a close, and we also know we need vigorous, positive action to further improve student outcomes this year and moving forward. As the State Superintendent of Education, I will continue to use my pulpit and all other opportunities to advocate for robust and sustained funding for public education, which, after all, is the only reason I sit before you all today. I think it's vitally important that we ground our conversation in our current reality. Unlike student transportation performance, a 25% point improvement in statewide assessment scores is not possible in one school year. We know that students missed out on vital learning when our schools were closed for in-person instruction. We also know that missed learning tends to compound on itself, so we need to accelerate student learning just to break even. OSSE and LEAs, and again, our LEAs, our principals, our school leaders, are investing key strategies to accelerate student learning and sustain academic progress, including through high-impact tutoring, high-quality curriculum materials, extended learning opportunities, direct investments in teacher compensations, and deep investments in the professional learning opportunities for district teachers. Multiple president candidates have said that they want to eliminate the Department of Education, yet our statewide assessment results suggest that the investments are paying dividends and they demand continued support. Now is not the time to pull the rug from beneath our students. I hope you will continue to voice your support for continued federal investments in public education and in our school system. In addition to sharing top 2023 results, I'm excited to share we are transitioning from the PARCC assessments to a new DC-based statewide assessment system in 2024. The District of Columbia Comprehensive Assessments of Progress in Education, or DC CAPE. DC played an important role in developing the PARCC assessments alongside many other states, and we continue to value the role that the PARCC Consortium played in helping build our capacity to develop high-quality standardized assessments. Yet, with the dissolution of the PARCC Consortium, it's time for DC to move forward on its own terms. While the DC CAPE name is new, and it reflects the heroism of our students as they grow toward readiness for a wide range of post-graduation options, many aspects of DC's statewide assessment system will remain the same, including DC's content standards and assessed grades and subjects, the number and types of questions students will see, the student-facing platform and features, and the rigorous DC evaluation checks for biased or poorly constructed questions or content. Of central importance, we will be able to maintain comparability and continuity from previous years of PARCC administration. So we will accurately examine 2024 proficiency and growth against previous years. We look forward to working with the LEAs in the coming months to prepare for the first administration of DC CAPE in 2024. I recognize that no single assessment can capture the full spectrum of skills students need to be successful in school and in life. Our statewide assessments do not capture leadership skills, pro-social behavior, or students' capacity for cultivating friendship, among many other vital skills. But DC CAPE will continue to provide parents, teachers, LEA leaders, and policymakers with indispensable information on students' strengths and needs in writing, reading, math, and science. Our statewide assessments will continue to be the only standardized assessment that allows individuals to look across schools and LEAs to identify strengths and areas of improvement in student performance down to the specific DC standard level. This information is invaluable, and even as our critics will point to the results of our statewide assessments when analyzing the state of the district's evaluation system, I am proud that the district will continue to hold a very high bar. Our assessments are amongst the most rigorous in the country because we hold the highest expectations for our students. Transparency and data quality are essential for assessments. They are also must-haves for the next topic I'd like to touch on, the DC School Report Card. I'm pleased that you will be hosting a panel on the report card this evening. I know that my team will be eagerly listening. OSSE recently reached out to the co-chairs of the State Level and Systemic Policy Committee, Representatives Patterson and Williams, to finalize the State Board of Education's and OSSE's joint DC School Report Card engagement sessions. As previewed in previous working sessions, our aim is to host 3 public engagement sessions, one on the content that the report card should include, a second on the summative score display, and the third on the overall visual elements and features of the report card. We look forward to finalizing these plans for these engagement sessions and publicizing the times and dates so we can get as much community participation as possible. In addition, we've made revisions to the public survey as a result of your feedback and shared the revised draft with Representatives Patterson and Williams. We hope to post the survey as soon as possible and keep it open through September, October, and the month of November. Thank you, as always, for your thoughtful partnership and engagement on the report card survey and its design at your previous working session meeting. We are optimistic about the continued positive collaboration on this topic and continuing to improve our DC report card for district families. Just as we look forward to continued engagement on the report card with the board, we also look forward to continued engagement and collaboration as we develop Washington, D.C.'s first set of financial literacy standards. Since our team met with you earlier this month, we have continued to engage educators, students, and the public on these priorities for our new financial literacy standards. We had a particularly productive engagement session with KIPP students earlier this month. In response to board feedback, we have also connected with every Ward 8 A&C representative to invite them to participate in and share the financial literacy survey. My team is now hard at work at considering stakeholder feedback and incorporating that feedback into a draft of the standards, which we look forward to publishing later this fall. I'm also pleased to report that the work of the Early Education Literacy Task Force is nearing its conclusion, and OSSE is on track to deliver its final recommendations to the chairman of the DC Council and the mayor very soon. We look forward to working with DC educational stakeholders to support the implementation of the report's recommendations. I want to publicly thank Representative Chang for his service and his commitment to the task force and to literacy education, and his support in crafting what are truly excellent recommendations. I look forward to using this report as a springboard to further advance literacy outcomes in the district for years to come. I know that my remarks have been slightly longer. I will say it's because I miss a month in August. But I do want to share one more important item with you all to raise to the board and for the public's awareness. In 1872, the District of Columbia constructed the Charles Sumner School. Named after an esteemed anti-slavery Massachusetts senator, it's one of the first public school buildings erected in DC for the education of black students. Designed, the award-winning building is one of the oldest minimally altered public school buildings for black students in the nation. In 1986, this important historical landmark was transformed into a museum and the Public Education's Archives building with a focus on instruction of African American students. And since 2007, it has been governed and operated by OSSE. Tomorrow evening, we will celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Sumner School, and I do want to thank board members who will be attending and thanking the board for its support of this amazing and historic milestone. While the timing was a coincidence, tomorrow I also will have the joy and privilege of speaking at the Congressional Black Caucus to members of the NAACP and the National Education Association about the shortage of black educators in our classroom. National research shows that black students, on average, have better attendance, fewer disciplinary issues, and better academic performance when they have access to black teachers. Yet black teachers continue to be underrepresented locally and nationally. As an education system, we must strive to build a representative workforce so that all our students see a place for themselves in academic spaces. Though we have made remarkable progress over the past 150 years, we still have a very long way to go. Moreover, progress is not linear and it is not a given. Each of us play a critical role, and we have to remain committed to educational equity. We must use our limited time and our resources and our energy to push for an educational ecosystem that provides our students with as close to an equal opportunity to succeed in school and life as humanly possible. While we are not there yet, with your collective help, we are moving the ball forward. Thank you, truly, and thank you for your continued collaboration, your goodwill, and your collective efforts to make our system better. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful evening, and truly thank you all for your support.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Dr. Grant. We appreciate OSSI's continued partnership on so many policy issues of importance to our students and schools. I think it's pretty timely as we transition from social studies standards to celebrating the summer of school this week. And I know that many of my constituents and people around the city are excited about the new financial literacy standards. So thank you. We are now transitioning to the panel. Tonight's panelists will provide local and national perspectives on the upcoming DC school report card changes. Their verbatim and written testimony will help us to ensure that the data elements and design features included on the report card are impactful and meet the needs of the public. Tonight, we will hear from Dr. Jonathan Swabish, Senior Fellow, Urban Institute, and Dr. Betsy Wolf, Education Research Scientist and local public school parent. I ask both of you to join us at the table now. Each of you will have up to 5 minutes, and then we will move to one round of questions from the State Board. We will begin with Dr., I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Schwabish. I said it right. Okay,
it's
awesome.
Like Charles Schwab, but not quite.
Okay.
Ish.
See, that's back when we used to teach phonics in DC Public Schools. So, Dr. Swabish, and please start with you, and when you're ready.
Thank you very much. President Thompson, Vice President O'Leary, esteemed members of the State Board, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here to share with you my ideas and perspectives on how the DC school system can create effective graphs, charts, and diagrams to help inform families, students, staff, and administrators. The views expressed in this and my written testimony are my own and should not be attributed to the Urban Institute, its trustees, or its funders. Data visualization, the art and science of creating effective graphs, charts, and diagrams, plays a crucial role in the work of researchers and analysts. Organizations tasked with producing, releasing, and analyzing data can more effectively communicate their work by understanding how to visualize their data. Often, however, visualizing results is an afterthought, secondary to the analysis, and thus limiting effective relay of information. I believe everyone can be better data consumers and data producers by first and foremost better understanding the needs of their readers, users, and audience members. Without recognizing what the user needs, their level of expertise and interest in the subject area, what platforms and technologies they can or can't use, and how they are going to use the information presented to them, the graph creator is not going to be successful as they can be. The best way to establish who the audience is and what they need is to ask them. Creators can sit with potential users, be they parents, students, or staff, and follow them as they use the report, the dashboard, or the visualization. This is a classic study of user experience, which works for a reason. Following people as they navigate or use the visualization will yield important information in how people actually use the site or the report. As the board considers the different audience needs, I would encourage you to think about the different types of visualizations that can help the users achieve their goals. Those visualizations might be static graphs shown as images or in PDF reports, or as interactive visualizations where users can click and hover and filter. And while interactive visualizations may, on their face, look interesting and promise infinite options to filter and interact, many people are simply unlikely to ever hover or click. It is worth noting that the DC School Report Card website houses both interactive and static data visualizations. Many of those graphics could be improved with some basic styling and design changes, but in particular, I want to note that the PDF reports for individual schools and districts were created using the R programming language. And while R is a useful tool to create data visualizations and reports, even those PDF reports could be improved. And as an example, the Urban Institute's State Fiscal Briefs project uses the same R programming language to create standalone web pages that provide detailed information for each state in the country in an engaging and effective way. Before closing, I would like to make 3 final points. First, accessibility should be a primary concern of any data visualization creation effort. Disabled people still fight for full inclusion and equality when it comes to employment, healthcare, and access to transportation, and more. There are numerous strategies data visualization creators can use to build accessible data visualizations, and I have included some of them in my longer written statement. Second, to unlock the full potential of data, we must apply an equitable lens to every step of the data process. Were the data collected responsibly, and do they accurately represent the communities surveyed? Do the data collection efforts allow for and incorporate community input? The answers to these questions will vary by project, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach. I would also add that, especially for data around students and children, considerations around data privacy and security are critical. Additionally, considering who answered the questions for the data collection are also important. For example, when collecting data on gender and sexual orientation, are parents able to accurately report their children's identities? Do children feel safe and secure to report their own identities? The accuracy and reliability of any data visualization will only be as strong as the data it is based on. Finally, to consider the ways the board might help its schools and stakeholders continue this journey, I would recommend the suggestions of my colleagues and I put forth for the National Center for Education Statistics technical panel. In that report, which I've cited in my written testimony, we recommend a phased approach to building a data culture that can evolve with stakeholders and learn from mistakes. Pulling the various pieces of effective data visualization and data communication together is not an easy challenge. There are a host of considerations, from graphic type and platform, to accessibility, to equity and inclusivity. And furthermore, building a mature data community in any organization, not to mention an organization as large and diverse as the DC school system, requires cultural as well as technological change. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Good evening, DC State Board of Education. Thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight. As many of you know, school ratings is a topic I care a lot about on a personal level and also as an education researcher. First, I want to address OSSE's decision to move from a 5-star rating to a 100-point one. OSSE believes 5-point ratings are somehow conceptually different than 100-point ratings, but equivalent fractions in elementary school math would argue otherwise. For example, we all know that 2 out of 5 is 4 out of 10, is 8 out of 20, is 40 out of 100, and so on. But OSSE is missing the point here. The pushback to the 5-point scale was not about the 5-point scale specifically. OSSE would have received similar pushback if they had used a 10-point scale instead. The pushback was because OSSE systematically assigned the worst ratings to schools serving the most underserved students and the highest ratings to the schools serving the most well-resourced students, and the public saw the obvious problem with this. Moving to a 100-point scale does not change this fundamental problem. The reason why school ratings systematically vary according to the students they serve is because many of the inputs or metrics of school ratings are strongly correlated with student background, namely family access to resources. When each of the inputs of school ratings is correlated with student background, then school ratings themselves are also correlated with student background. I won't go into detail on this point because more detail is included in my testimony, but it is well documented that most of the proposed metrics here capture family access to resources to some extent and some more than others. Let me reiterate that it is both possible to hold high expectations of schools and students and also rate schools based on what they can actually do and what is in their purview of control. We can and should reject false choices around this point. Second, by using a 100-point scale, OSSE implies that there's some level of precision that isn't there. Every metric has a margin of error involved, and presenting school ratings without their margins of error implies that a school with a 60% is better than a school with a 50% rating, even though we couldn't really distinguish between the two of them statistically. For example, let's say we were to measure student height and we knew that we had a margin of error plus or minus 3 inches for every student, and we were going to assign scholarships based on these estimates. We would feel pretty good that the students on the two ends of the spectrum are different from each other in height, but we would feel less sure about whether students who are closer together in height were taller than one another, given our estimates. School ratings work the same way. So OSSE should feel more confident about identifying the 5% lowest performing schools than about giving ratings to all the schools and sort of lining up the schools that way. When accounting for the margin of error, we might get something like, the rating is between 45% and 65%. But by presenting the rating as a single number, it could lead parents to make the wrong decision if using the ratings alone. OSSE needs to be clear that there's a margin of error, or better yet, calculate one and present it along with the ratings. I understand OSSE wants to be transparent by releasing all the ratings, but to be transparent though, it needs to provide more information. One, OSSE needs to communicate what the school rating actually captures and add a disclaimer, because it's not just capturing school quality. School ratings capture three things: student background, error, and school quality. But even if OSSE adds this disclaimer, it will likely be insufficient to prevent all harm caused by low ratings. Let's not lose sight of the fact that our primary goal should be improving education for our students, and for the most underserved students in particular. We should think hard about whether assigning low ratings to schools serving the most underserved students actually helps. Two, OSSE would need to make clear that there is a margin of error. This means we can't reliably rank all schools by their scores. Presenting the school rating as is, without error, is misleading. If OSSE is unwilling to add these disclaimers, then it's not really about transparency. OSSE is required by federal law to calculate the 5% lowest performing schools. They could do this and provide transparent documentation without introducing other problems. OSSE could also encourage desegregating school choices by emphasizing the growth metrics least correlated with student background. However, they will still need to address the margin of error issue, which is typically larger for growth metrics. I recognize that I'm being hard on OSSE, as the vast majority of states rate schools in similar and problematic ways and have done so for a long time. But just because this is the way that it's been done doesn't make it right. Can you think of any other systems that are largely accepted by society that are not accurate, fair, or equitable? Yes, of course you can. This is DC. In the case of school ratings, we know better. And if we know better, shouldn't we be held accountable for doing better? This could be a real opportunity for the State Board of Ed and OSSE to lead in this area, but we have to have honest conversations about what the research says to date about these metrics and whether we have enough research support to use these metrics in high-stakes decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Director Butler actually is going to call the round of member questions. Each member has 3 minutes. A reminder to the members, and this is news to the panelists, the 3 minutes to respond does include the question or comment and your response. Okay? Director Butler.
Thank you. Representative Henderson.
Thank you both for being here. Before I ask you a question, I want to quickly read a few snippets from submitted testimony, written testimony, first from Ashley Carey, who's a PhD candidate at University of Massachusetts Lowell School of Education. She submitted testimony saying, summative accountability scores are ripe for misuse and could undermine the board's expressed goal of equity. Beyond the issue that summative scores do not provide interpretable information to the public, they make it easy for members of the public to develop a snapshot opinion of a school that it is either good or bad based on a single score. This is problematic because summative scores often over-identify schools serving higher proportions of white and wealthy students as higher performing, driving issues like segregation. I would advise against publishing aggregate scores on the school's individual report card. And then also from Dr. Jack Schneider, professor at University of Massachusetts Amherst. He says, there is no responsible argument for summative scores. The argument in favor of such a practice is one that frames families as ignorant and disinterested, and which further frames school choice rather than family and community engagement as the central purpose of school quality information. There are ways to inform non-experts without infantilizing them and ultimately misinforming them, end quote. So you may have heard Dr. Grant saying that we're going to do a survey, kind of asking people to the point you made, like ask the people what they want. If people want some measure of school quality, as it is, do we have something to offer them, would you say? Dr. Wolf, if you would.
So I mean, we have pieces, right? But like one of the issues with the median growth percentile, it's one of the least sophisticated growth measures, and the error margin could be quite high on that. So normally I would say, yeah, we could highlight growth, we could highlight, you know, whether students are happy, sort of social, emotional indicators, but I would want to see the margin in error, or at least publicize that along with the growth measures too, because just to make sure it's clear what's being presented.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Wolf, you mentioned that disclaimers would be needed, presenting the margin of error would be helpful, but I also heard you, Mr. Schwabish, say people are unlikely to hover or click. So what would you say about how that information would need to be presented for it to be meaningful to users?
I mean, I think underlying any discussion of margin of errors, regardless if it's education, if it's climate change, if it's the economy, any discussion or visualization of margin of error, statistical concepts, uncertainty, you need to describe or explain to users what that means. If you think about your standard political polling measures, I think most people don't quite understand that the difference between 42% and 41% approval ratings is probably not statistically different. So that needs to be explained to users.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Patterson?
Thank you. Truly appreciate both of you guys for coming here. You guys hit on some notes that resonated with me, to say the least. So I'll go right into it since I only have 3 minutes. For you, Swabish,
Yes, sir.
I wanted to make sure I said it correctly. You mentioned cultural changes. If you could speak on that very quickly, or what would you say or recommend when you say that, you know, we need to keep that in mind as we do this?
Yeah, I think data for a lot of people is scary. I think there's a lot of baggage that comes with it, and that doesn't matter if you're a parent, if you're an educator, if you're an administrator. And so I think being able to provide power to people, that they own some of the data in a conceptual framework. I think one of the questions from the representative on asking people, there is a science behind a lot of the things that we're talking about. And so encouraging people to feel ownership, but not that they own the data, I think is important, particularly when you're talking about an organization where there are a lot of different stakeholders. And so putting the power in their hands to say, this is my data, it's being released to me, it's transparent, and then empowering members of the staff that they can contribute to those visualizations or that survey collection, that data collection can be very helpful, I think.
And if you don't know, I live in Ward 8, which is one of our most underserved and marginalized community. How would you recommend going about getting that data from groups that historically don't respond to a lot of these surveys and questionnaires?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the surveys that we use now rely on technology that not necessarily everybody has access to. And one of the things that we have found at the Urban Institute that we are trying to pilot and do more of in the social science sector is to get into the community and use community engagement methods. So you actually work with the community, get into the community, work with advocacy groups, work with other CBOs to bring them together to find out how can we get that information and how can we provide it back to you? I think that's been a long-standing problem between science, be it social science or other sciences, and communities, that it often feels very extractive, that we come in as researchers, grab their data and walk away with it, and we don't bring it back to them. And one of the sort of pillars of community engaged methods is that we continue that engagement. It's not an extractive process that we give back at the end of the day.
Okay, and I appreciate that. There should be a two-way relationship, and it should always go back and forth. Thank you. And with my last few seconds that I do have, I'm sorry, Dr. Wolf, but you mentioned very quickly resources, which very much resonates with me. How would that appear on a report card when we're talking about resources? How will we find out what schools are getting what resources?
So I think I was saying that the school quality is made out of, or the school rating is made out of 3 things. School quality, what the school does, some error, and also student background. And the student background is like related to their family's access of resources, like before they even get into school. I think that's what I was saying.
Okay. Because I wanted to, because that resonates with me, and I know I'm out of time, but a lot of our schools east of the river do not have the same resources as other communities. So thank you, my time.
Thank you. Representative Reed?
Thank you, Dr. Patterson. Appreciate that question related to surveys, and Mr. Swabish, or Dr. Swabish, related to the your response. My question is, there's a lot of concentration on the school profiles, But the DC School Report Card is the state level landing page. And currently we have what school enrollment is, attendance, statewide assessments, school environments, academic performance, finances, and then on the little box on the side are the school profiles. What else in regards to your expertise related to displays, and Dr. Wolf, your expertise related to what is meaningful information for the state to reflect back should be possibly added to this page, even though you might not be fully versed in what's on it, but in the relatively perfect world, what would you throw on that state level landing page, also known as the DC School Report Card?
Sure. I mean, I think for a state, longitudinal trends are interesting to look at. Now, you can't attribute that to any reform or anything that's going on, because it could be that, it could be changes in students, but having some nice graphs kind of showing changes over time and who the district is serving, so like the characteristics, and then also maybe difference in achievement levels, and beyond just reading and math, we have science and other things as well.
So I would say the tool that's being used, there are two tools, primary tools that are being used. One is a corporate corporate dashboarding tool, which I've actually never seen used publicly. I know it's very popular internally. I've never seen it used publicly, so this was a first for me. And as I mentioned, the individual report cards you mentioned that you showed are in separate PDF files. I think the dashboard itself, and I'm not going to get into a full critique of the entire page, and I know there's probably not many of you up here who are actually working on the coding behind these things. There are some things that could certainly be improved. I would say a lot of the interactive pieces that you reflect on, people don't hover, right? And the reason why people don't hover, 10 years ago when the tools and the programming languages became better, everything was interactive. We quickly learned, because of mobile phone technology, that people didn't use that. You think about your commute to work, how often are you clicking and hovering on charts on your phone? We just don't do it, and this is the way people interact with data. I think generally, my overarching thought about the report card is I think about, as a parent living in Northern Virginia now, and I used to have kids at Ludlow Taylor, but thinking about what I would want to see on the website is a location device. I want to be able to see schools on the map and be able to click around and see what's happening.
And I'm going to jump in because I got 20 seconds.
Yes.
What in regards to level setting? So right now there's nothing that says like what is the median, mode, range, all the other things that put the profiles into view. So what are your thoughts about that? And I'm probably gonna run out of time. Maybe if there's a second round, or we can follow up.
Thank you. Representative Williams?
Yeah, thank you both for your testimony. Dr. Wolf, I'm going to start with you. You use a phrase like plainly what schools actually do, right? So measuring schools. What stands out to you as like the most important factors for actually measuring school qualities that schools can control for?
So growth, with all the caveats about our growth measure. Student well-being, sometimes student surveys can be highly reliable and captures a reliable metric of school quality that's even different than achievement. There's also maybe some attendance growth, that could be attributable to the school. However, there's a lot of error there. So really, for all of these metrics, you're talking about a minority of the percentage can actually be attributed to schools, but usually the growth metrics are more, they have more error, but they're also going to speak more to what the school is actually doing.
And to your other point around those not being correlated with student backgrounds, you would say that the ones you just mentioned would fall into that category?
Normally, a growth metric would not be correlated with student background. Our median growth percentile is a little bit. It's still better than proficiency rate, but that's just a limitation of the measure we're using.
And what are your thoughts? Thank you. What are your thoughts on like how this tool can actually be used to like provide the supports that individual school communities need given our system of governance?
Do you mean how the school report card can be used?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand what you mean by that.
I guess like how are we making sure that if a school is struggling with attendance, like whether it be the council, whether it be OSSE, whether it be the mayor, whether it be recommendations from us, like I don't feel like as a city we have a system right now to really drive school improvement, right? So the statutorily we have to create this tool to be able to check that box. But to me, that's kind of like the start of the work of being able to improve schools. So what are your thoughts, whether it be in DC or whether we could garner things from other places, as to how it could actually be functional?
I mean, you're right that the school report card provides no support to schools, right? But again, if you were trying to do like school improvement district-wide, I would look at all the universe of schools. And then again, like I said, you're gonna trust the extremes more than the middle, right? So you're gonna look at, okay, who seems to be low on these like growth metrics, and can we support those schools? That's what I would do about it.
Thank you. And Dr. Schwabich, with my final 30 seconds, you had said, similar to Dr. Patterson's questions around accessibility and not just, engaging with community, that accessibility is the primary concern. How can we make sure, given our capacity, that we're getting valid measures of what the DC public wants?
So I think when I talk about accessibility, I talk about people who have certain vision impairments or physical impairments or intellectual impairments. I think one thing that many people forget about is not everybody can use a mouse. Not everybody can hold a phone. And so we need to consider the needs of those users. So I'll stop there.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Representative Goulet?
Thank you. And I was able to see your presentation. I was stuck in traffic getting here, but I appreciate it. That's the beauty of being able to watch this online. So thank you both for coming in and a really great presentation. I'll pick up right where Representative Williams left off and just follow up, because you were completing his answer, and I'll let you complete it here, and then I want to follow up on that question. So if there's anything else you'd like to say on just how we make this available for everybody to participate and provide feedback in the report card process.
Yeah, I guess I would just finish up by saying, again, it requires a conversation, an ongoing conversation with the community, with the administrators, with the parents, with the staff, to see how they are going to use this material. And I think to the previous conversation about, does this support decision making? I can give you, I don't work in the education space, I work in the nutrition space. If I told you that one area of the country had a food insecurity rate of 1% and another area had 20%, that data is important, but we only can learn how to solve the problem by understanding what are the policies and practices and challenges that district that's being successful is actually implementing. And so I think the data only gets us so far. The data doesn't get us necessarily to the point where we can actually address the issues and solve the problem.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I think that would be a great opportunity for us as a state board, I think for OSSI as our state superintendent's office, to really reach out and, not just on the website, because that'll only reach so many people, but get things out on the listservs and then go directly to parents, because this is a real opportunity to find out from parents what information they really want to see. And then if things come up over and over again that are concerns, it would give us a kind of a to-do list of things parents are concerned about. I know in my community in Ward 3, I hear issues about pre-K availability. That's a huge issue for us. We have overcrowded schools in Ward 3, and we're the only ward in the city that doesn't have any pre-K 3, and pre-K 4 is still just a lottery system. We're concerned about class sizes. It's contributing to teacher burnout. And then also the availability of special courses. That's huge for parents. They mentioned that over and over again, extracurricular activities, and then safety issues at the schools. Those are things that parents bring to me. So I think any dashboard should reflect that. I mean, what have you seen, if you could quickly, either of you, what have people done to really connect with the community? What would you say is the best practice that we can adopt here in DC to maximize, a cross-section of public engagement?
I'll say very quickly from the data visualization perspective, the way to get people to stay on and pay attention to a dashboard is that they're able to see themselves, be able to see their experience in the data. So that's why maps are so powerful, because I can find myself in Ward 3 or Ward 8 or whatever it might be.
Great.
I'll answer part of that question. It answers your question, Dr. Patterson, is cognitive interviews. So you could do surveys with a large number of people, and you could do cognitive interviews with a few people from each ward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President O'Leary?
I was never a fan when they started talking about a report card, and I'm less of a fan now. I think there needs to be a complete overhaul, and it needs to reflect what the school is and what the product is at the end of the year, just like a report card shows the progress that someone has made from the beginning of the school year to the end of the year. And the way that the park test was used as the biggest figure on the report card was going to label schools before they even started the school year. You talked about ownership. We're going to have some engagement sessions in the next couple of months, the board and OSSI. And I don't know how many people are watching, thousands of people are watching, but please try to get to the engagement session. We will publicize those. And hopefully, because we're working with OSSI on this, the revision of the report card, hopefully we'll be able to have a lot of input from the community rather than just input from those in the community who can make input because they may have a computer in their house where other people may not. So we want to have as many people input information so that the report card can reflect what a school does from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Because coming from a school that was going to be a one-star school, and there wasn't anything that was going to help that as far as the metrics were, I think the metrics should reflect what is going on in the buildings. Can you all talk about that a little bit?
I think that's back to the earlier question, I think it's like, focusing on the metrics that schools can't control, right? Like the growth, like the attendance growth, like, where kids started and where they ended up. The problem is our growth metrics are just really noisy, full of error. So we also have to show that. We have to show, okay, this school has above average growth, but we can't give it a specific number. It might be a range, an interval, if you will.
I guess the one thing I would say is you think about these engagement meetings. I know we're in a hearing and you're all up on the dais and there's thousands of people watching online, and I haven't looked behind me, but hundreds of people I'm sure are behind me right now. I would encourage you to think about engagement methods where you actually have people come together and do something together. Actually engage them together in an activity, in something that they can do, and that can be combined. We're in a not quite post-pandemic world, but there are lots of hybrid ways that the thousands of people online can contribute to the hundreds of people behind me in the room, and to facilitate that sort of engagement. That's not just answer a bunch of questions on a survey that's in a Google form that's separate. Let's actually work together. Let's brainstorm together. And I think that's a way you can actually engage the community.
Thank you.
President Thompson, thank you.
I appreciate the sarcasm at 6:30 in the evening. I want to, tie together a couple of things. So one, I appreciate you talking about hearing some of the responses around the how. I'm curious if there are any particular opportunities around the report card data that will really lend themselves to finding out if the data, or how can we make the data accessible? How can we make it comprehensive? Are these either the right things, or even if they are the right things, how do we showcase them in a way that's meaningful? So I'm curious if either one of you have thoughts about that. And then I'll also just say, one of the things the state board is considering is school climate measures. That by itself is not a friendly term to most people. We underestimate that people are like, yes, school climate means, some of them are like, that could mean the weather in the school. So given some of those things, could you talk about opportunities for accessibility, where we should be thinking, where we should be focusing in these conversations?
I would say on the latter point first, one thing is to, back to the discussion about margin of errors, help people understand what are the concepts, what are the terms, define that for people. And not because I'm suggesting that people don't understand or they're lay people, but not all of us have the same level of interest, the same level of expertise, the same experience. And so just to that point of school climate, what does that mean? Let's define it. Maybe we do need a new word, but maybe we can't use a new word, so let's define what that actually means for people. To the question of are data meaningful, again, I think it comes back to asking people. What do they look for? What do parents look for when they are assessing their schools and their neighborhood schools? What are the things that they're looking for? What are the things that are most meaningful to them? And that way you find out what are the things that should be, if we talk practically, what are the things that should be at the top of that report card? Should it be test scores? Should it be demographic breakdowns? Should it be how long it takes to get to school. What are the things that matter to parents, and what are the things that matter to students?
I would also, I really like the way that CETA at Stanford does it. So like proficiency rates, they would say educational opportunity since birth. And for growth, they would say how much students learned in this school. So there is a way to simplify it and put kind of user-friendly terms. You could have the same kind of phrase even with school climate that you would describe. Also visually, I think simplifying, like I think the Tableau dashboard is probably too much for most people. I think kind of simplifying like each of the various points you're trying to get across.
And in most people, you probably mean me. I've been watching a meme make its rounds about, I was today years old when I figured out that 30% chance of rain doesn't mean there's 30% chance it will rain is 30% of the viewing area. So just the things we think we understand are important. Thank you. I want to thank our panelists, and I want to thank our members for the questions. I would also call attention both to the members, the viewing public, both the hundreds in the room and the thousands online, that we do also have written testimony from several other expert panelists who could not attend this evening, but they are accessible on our State Board website. I want to transition us, so you all are free to leave the table. We will use your thoughts and suggestions to help guide the board's work with OSSE over the coming months. We look forward again to hosting our engagement sessions. A lot of plugs about that this evening, and providing multiple pathways for the public to give feedback and ensure we hear from as many voices as possible. The State Board will now recess for 5 minutes. 5 minutes means be back, I'm gonna say 6, at 6:40. When we return, we will welcome our public witnesses. All right, I'm bringing us back from the break. This is your 30-second warning. Okay. We hear testimony from public witnesses at every public meeting, and your comments become part of our official record. If you would like to speak at a future public meeting, please sign up on our website at sboe.dc.gov or contact our staff by email sboe@dc.gov or by phone at 202-741-0888. Tonight, we have 24 individuals who submitted public testimony. We will hear from those in attendance in a panel format, and you will be broken up into groups of 5. All right. Each witness will have up to 3 minutes to provide comments. Please note that you must use the microphone at the table. We do have 2 tonight, so that's progress. Use the microphones at the table. The microphones should already be on. The timer light on the table will be green for the first 2.5 minutes, yellow for the last 30 seconds, and red after 3 minutes have lapsed. After our public witnesses speak, we will pause for questions from our board members. Members will have 3 minutes for questions for our public witnesses, and those 3 minutes still include the question or comment and the response. Director Butler will call the public witnesses to the table and announce the question rounds. She will also assist with timing to ensure our witnesses and board members stay within their allotted time. Director Butler, you may ask public witnesses to come to the table now.
Thank you. The first 5 witnesses are Maya Baum, Brittany Henderson, Rachel Hargraves, Mai Miles, and Renelle Rouse. Please come to the front table. And we will start with Rain Reed.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
There's only 3 people, so I was going to keep going down the list until we got to 5.
Gotcha.
No problem. Rain Reed, Gabriel DeBose, Kelly Yukon. Carrie Francis. Oh. Okay, we'll start with the young lady on this end here and work our way down.
Good evening. My name is Brittany Henderson. I'm a Doctor of Educational Leadership and Equity, an Empower Ed Fellow, an activist, a DC educator, and an instructional leader specializing in literacy. I'm here tonight because school ratings are the reason why I do not know a big piece of my family history. As a direct descendant of enslaved Black people in the United States, I come from a family that has been impacted for generations by the intentional racist design of schooling in this country. Not only is the school report card system a continuation of that design, it uses standardized testing scores to determine what rating a school will get. As we know, standardized tests were made to ensure that the success of people who are not rich, lacked access, and/or are not white was thwarted at every step. It created a system that provided evidence that a school, their students, and their neighborhoods weren't good enough. Evidence that turned our students into numbers that only drastic measures can change. When you think of a good school, what kinds of children do you envision attending that school? What color is their skin? What socioeconomic status do their families hold? What do the teachers look like? What neighborhood do you envision? What do you think of as a measure of a good school? The concept of good schools is what led my father into a life of incarceration and me into a life where the only opportunity my parents thought I could have were in rich white neighborhoods. How do good schools lead to incarceration? If your neighborhood schools determine good or bad by test scores and summative assessments, you don't have access to fundings, art, quality food, and after-school programs. Scarcity and the need to survive become top of mind. If you manage to overcome that life of incarceration, you still are incarcerated mentally, which is why I do not know much about my father's neighborhood, the people he grew up with, and very rarely saw my grandmother. My father was so terrified of repeating a cycle with his children that he abandoned where he came from and pushed white normative standards of speaking, schooling, and ideas of success onto me. I went to good schools with good ratings. School ratings do not tell the full story of a school. A common phrase we hear in education today is to teach the whole child. The school report card ratings look at the performance of a student, not the student as a human. It then further dehumanizes what DC names as the most vulnerable students and categorizes them based on a grade. I was also dehumanized. While I may seem like a success story, the idea of good schools led my family into debt, food insecurity, and an emotional unstable environment. The pressure to live above their means, ensure I can attend a free public school, a good school, destroyed the infrastructure of my family. These schools did not care about me. These schools did not care about my story. These schools did not care about what person I would become. We can't preach educating the whole child and at the same time gatekeep who has access to what funds. The term good school should not even exist. Good schools taught me that others were bad. I still walk into a school where I give students standardized tests knowing they're racist, and I urge them to do their best until the systems like school report cards are no longer. That is the only way I can ensure that the school they trust to educate them is a good school. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Francis, and I've been working for DCPS since 2016. And I'm here to talk to you about making our public and charter schools a safer place and how you should credit our schools doing this type of work in our new school report cards. With the teen violence on the rise, especially in the school I work in, we got to come to like some kind of restoration to help our students become proactive. In the DCPS school I work at, we've improved our safety by creating a mechanism of applying a restorative justice program for our students. And what we want to do is improve the safety of our students by implementing and creating a restorative justice community by finding like the space, the furniture, the finances, stuff like that, and also providing a curriculum before and after school. We have put people in place, so that the students can have an opportunity to talk to people for restorative justice. But we want to also have a buy-in where teachers, administration, counselors, social workers, parents, even MPD and more can come in and be a part of our school education and making our schools a safer place. And I want to also talk about when I first started working for DCPS, I worked in the judicial system with juveniles, and we did restorative justice, but it was after the fact. And now, the school I'm at, we're implementing it before the fact. And so we want to be able to like share this with parents, you and me, all the different people in our society, so that we can get a better culture and education community for our students to keep the violence down. You know, for the students and parents, they can gain knowledge on what restorative justice is about. We can implement all of this on our report cards. And also, you know, we can't forget our principals. Let's keep them in the loop. Let's let them be a part of this, because they have a lot of information that they can share with us from each of their schools. And then all the things that the schools are doing, we want to be able to apply that to our report cards and let them know, hey, this is what's going on with our safety, and just keep it going in a certain manner. And then we want to make sure that this highlights the way our schools and our children are being safe with our curriculums and having the teachers on board and staff members and more. And I want to thank you guys for listening to me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Raynell Rouse, and I am a third-generation Washingtonian. After graduating from Friendship Collegiate Academy, located in Ward 7, I obtained a bachelor's degree in theater and a master's degree in public administration from West Virginia State University. High school was a vital portion of my life, filled with great memories and awesome people. I also had a traumatic experience, my mother's death. Despite my life shifting completely, the one thing that remained the same was my high school. Not only did my teachers rally around with sympathy right after her death, but they consistently supported me throughout my high school career, from noticing a shift in my behavior to assisting me with navigating grief and teenage emotions. I received social and emotional support from my teachers, although, to my knowledge, they didn't have any training. They went above and beyond to support my growth in self-awareness, management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making, which are all included in social emotional skills students need as they develop in high school. This should be included in school ratings because it directly impacts the students and how they show up inside of the school building. Though dedicating many years to growing as a community organizer within the nonprofit sector, having a sense of community in my high school influenced my decision to return back to my alma mater as an educator. High school ratings must encompass the evaluation of how schools support the whole scholar and not just their test scores. Schools should have emotional support teams encompassed of social workers, therapists, psychologists, and counselors. Are students engaged or still having issues with social emotional growth? If my high school had focused solely on my test scores, I would have been overlooked and wouldn't have received the support I needed to overcome the grief of losing a parent as a teenager. Although the loss of my mother losing my mother at a pivotal time in my life was traumatic, as a teacher, I now realize that my students experience many of the same traumas and can benefit from social emotional support. If social emotional support needs of students are not addressed, they cannot perform within the classroom. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is May Miles. I was born in China, but I attended first grade in Scotland And then I went back to China for 3 more years of elementary school before coming to the United States at age 10, where I had to learn English all over again. My entire foundation has been going to very good public schools. And you might not think that because my high school was situated in Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco, a less desirable neighborhood. But we have some of the best teachers and resources, so middle-class kids like myself would bus into Hunters Point and share the same learning environment as other kids in the neighborhood. Before becoming a teacher, I worked in the LA fashion and TV industry for almost a decade. And before that, I worked as a research assistant for a China human rights organization, as well as the Aspen Institute right out of college. I was able to transition from very different work environments because of my well-rounded public school education. I want to say I'm not against testing or quizzes or assessments. I am speaking out against 60 to 120-minute long standardized tests that do not align with background context for 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. Because teachers and schools are being scrutinized by these tests, teachers have no choice but to teach testing content instead of teaching the foundational skills that we have all come to know as reading, writing, arithmetics. If schools are meant to produce well-rounded young adults, then schools and teachers should be judged by cultivating creative problem solving, the ability to embrace failing and trying again. I have told my students I had to retake my Praxis standardized test 3 times before passing. In fact, I scored lower after studying the second time. If I were to be solely judged on my SAT scores, then I wouldn't have gotten into college. So I pose the question, why are schools, teachers, and students being defined solely by standardized test scores? Instead of rating schools based on summative scores, we would like to feature other indicators like positive school climate, teacher retention, connection to learning, and specialized programming. And if schools continue to function like a test factory, then we will continue to lose students to the streets. We will continue to see youth crimes at a younger and younger age, regardless of curfews or isolating poor performing schools in poor neighborhoods. Thank you so much for your time.
Greetings and salutations, members of the board. Thank you for including public testimony tonight. I am Gabrielle DuBose, teacher facilitator with Empower Ed. Whether it's a single summative number or the star rating system, inequality prevails. A single number system is punitive and used against schools that don't have high test scores. That same rating system is used by affluent families to separate, segregate, and essentially mobilize against real attempts to close the achievement gap. Schools in affluent neighborhoods use that single number to promote sameness, not ethnic inclusion. Students at those schools score better because the money and resources are not lacking. Any system with a single summative number or score encourages this disparity. The human element and how we serve our students should be the driving force behind celebrating what makes great schools in the nation's capital, not a score based on testing. Dependence on ratings that chastise effective teachers, attempts to embarrass hardworking students, and encourages a spirit of hopelessness that plagues families must change. We urge the SBOE to push for policy that includes a dashboard that is fair and communicates crucial details about school communities. When I asked 2 seniors at Duke Ellington, Ward 7 residents, about their high school experience compared to friends at neighborhood schools, my heart sank. We have systems that continue to fail our students. One senior said, DC doesn't set it up for black children to succeed in education in general. Of her friends attending neighborhood schools, she said they seem hopeless and think that teachers don't care what happens because there's little change in the classroom. The kids fall off into bad habits. She continued, they repeat familiar behaviors that keep them at a negative status quo. She believes kids want to learn, but they're not motivated because the factors they need to grow and sustain are weak at best. The other senior spoke about teachers needing help to reach students so students can show up to learn. She offered solutions. 1, Schools should offer tutoring multiple times per week where teachers have authority to create extended learning specific to student needs. And 2, families need greater access to understand how to support their child with time management and homework completion. Peggy Cooper Cafritz, former school board president and co-founder of Ellington, once said, "We should talk with children to learn their interests and find out ways to support them, then watch them grow." SBOE, please reform the DC School Report Card to monitor, measure, and analyze relevant data. Thank you.
Thank you all for your testimony today. Now we'll start with our round of questions from members. First, we'll start with Representative Henderson.
Thank you all. Dr. Henderson, thank you for your eloquent, powerful testimony about what does not tell the story of a school. I wonder if you would be willing to speak to what, to your mind, does better tell the story of a school.
I think something that I don't see as much on school report cards or that is talked about in a meaningful way is curriculum. While we measure achievement, we measure these tests that might come from the curriculum or the tests that are supposed to prepare the curriculum should have prepared the students with. We don't actually analyze the curriculum itself. Is it culturally responsive? And are the teachers executing that curriculum, giving them proper supports to be able to provide a culturally responsive curriculum? So I think that is one of the main points there.
All right, and follow up to that, and also to Ms. Francis and Ms. Rouse, you spoke of kind of school, student well-being. What could that look like on a report card? Would it be like a school does or does not have certain offerings or certain staff or certain programs? How would you imagine that appearing on the report?
First, they would need to have social emotional teams that specifically are inside of the building to assist with the social emotional child, not concerned with curricula or testing, but specifically what's going on with them socially and emotionally, which will assist with creating community inside of the school. And if you feel like you're a part of a community, then you'll want to contribute to that community and see it grow.
And then concerning like this, like seeing it actually written on a report card as far as like the restorative justice that's going on at our school, it can be where the parent is able, the parents and the family members, they're able to see like the progress of a student. Say, for example, if you have a student that skips class all the time and then they get involved in this restorative justice and then now they're going to class. So maybe there should be something to show, hey, they're involved in something, they're participating in something, they're getting better, they're going to class. Like in that perspective, and have it written on their report card, something that they can personally say, hey mom, look what I'm doing, or something like that.
All right, thank you. Dr. Wolf mentioned like growth in attendance, so I think maybe that would be a way of getting at that. And I guess I'm not going to be able to get another question out. So.
Okay, thank you. Representative Patterson.
Thank you, Director. As most people know, I'm a proud parent of 2 DCPS children, one in middle school, one in high school, and I also have a daughter that teaches in DC. And so, as a parent, and I know you guys are teachers or work with teachers, I want you to put yourself in a parent role, if you can, for this question. And can you tell me, whether it's the school that you teach or where you support, would you put your child in the school that you teach, or is there a school that you would put your child in if you don't teach?
I would 100% put my child in the school I teach at.
Okay, thank you.
That's why I came back to teach here.
Thank you.
I would put my child in the school where I teach too.
Okay.
We need more microphones. Yeah, I started my career at the school that I taught, that I teach, or I lead in now. And I went to work at a DCPS school and also another charter school, and I came back in 2019, so I definitely believe in my school's mission and the work that we are doing. It's a very unique school. We just had a race and equity professional development that I led alongside other teachers that we do frequently. And so if teachers are getting exposed to that kind of professional development, of course I would want my child to go to that school.
Okay.
I think for me it depends on what my child thrives in. If that child needs a lot of social emotional interaction, I think I would enroll him or her in my current school, assuming that he or she has a really strong foundation already. But I wouldn't enroll my child in my current school if it's starting from 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade because of the amount of testing. They're not learning anything to help them build those foundational skills. But if my child already has really strong reading, writing, and arithmetics, then yeah, I would.
Okay.
I would absolutely enroll my child in the school where I teach. In fact, both my kids have asked me, Mom, why didn't we attend Duke Ellington School of the Arts? Well, we lived in Texas at the time. But Ellington is a very safe environment and focuses on creating safe and welcoming environments for our students, whether it's based on ethnicity, disabilities, etc. In addition to us working very hard to integrate arts into academics within our school. So it's a safe environment, it's a trusting environment, and it's one where learning environments, creating them is encouraged.
I appreciate each one of you guys' question, because that's what I want to get to is why would a parent put their child in a school? I'm very much focused on, you know, the decisions that parents make every single day about where they're going to place their child, the resources that need to be in that school for them to excel, the programming, the well-being, the mental health. So thank you for each one of yours, and thank you for Duke Ellington. My son attends there currently, 9th grader.
Thank you. Representative Reed.
Thank you for being here. No questions.
Representative Williams.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you all for your powerful testimony. As a teacher, I share in your passion to be able to create more holistic measures that better help move our schools and improve our schools and make joyful learning environments. In terms of the dashboard, that's something that I know Empower Ed has advocated for years. Are there things that come to mind that you think would be most essential to highlight in that dashboard?
If I could respond, because I made a few notes here with regards to the dashboard option. Things like student enrollment in core classes, enrollment by gender, student participation and integration of the arts into academics, enrollment, students with disabilities and what that enrollment looks like, graduation rates, teacher-to-student ratio, SEL participation, as was mentioned here as well. The dashboard is a glimpse of what types of environments the school has incorporated and embedded into the school's culture and community, so that parents who are considering that school can see what the student's going to have access to in addition to regular class settings, et cetera.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then Ms. Francis or Ms. Rouse, like with regards to the social emotional learning, like I also understand how pivotal it is, like as a teacher, right, to be able to support students and make sure everyone feels safe. In terms of like a student safety rating, the thing that makes sense to me is like a student survey, to be able to kind of have an indicator of how safe students feel, both like in the community but also in the school. Is that something you would support, or how else do you feel like we can measure safety?
Spaces that are facilitated by people they trust. One thing I've learned as a high school educator is if I gain the trust of a scholar, I can get them to trust to realize I have their best interests in heart, and they'll be 100% honest with me. So if you create a safe space where they can answer those questions and give you their honest reactions with people they trust, I think it'll be a great idea to get their say-so.
And that's kind of what we're doing. I'm at H.D. Woodson. We have, our principal has gotten 2 restorative justice people, and they're starting to connect with the students, and they're creating a space. They're getting furniture. They need, the buy-in of the teachers, the counselors, and all of that to make it come together. So it's starting to improve and grow. And I think that that's going to really like play a big part in our student culture and the neighborhood in which the students live, so that we can get the parents, the community, and everybody involved.
Yeah, thank you all for your testimony.
Representative Goulet.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming down and sharing your perspectives and your testimony tonight. And I'll start with, you know what, I'll start with Ms. Francis. Thanks for sharing the the take on what Woodson's doing right now. We had a great opportunity to go to the Lockridge Foundation event. I know it was Representative Patterson, our state board president, and then Representative Reed that were able to attend that event. And I believe Woodson's principal was on the panel. And it was really a great, each school was doing something different, but one thing that was the same is they were listening to the students. They were trying to involve all stakeholders. So I'd love to talk to you in the aftermath of this and find out about what's working well at Woodson. And when I was able to speak to our great students that we have on our Student Advisory Council, they had different perspectives about individual challenges at individual schools. So I'm really excited as we look at this, not to find a one-size-fits-all approach, but to learn from positive things you found at Woodson with your program, and then be able to maybe use that to address challenges at a different school, or find out creative solutions that could be something that solves an issue in one place of the city, but may not work someplace else. So I'd love to talk with you in the aftermath of it, find out more about what you're doing that's worked, and I just appreciate you sharing that with us today. And then just real quickly, Ms. Dubose, you raised a really important issue for me, and that's special education. So with this boundary study we have coming up, making sure that we're putting within the boundary study inclusive education within all of our schools. So how would that translate into the dashboard, would you think? How would we show whether we're meeting inclusive special education needs for students in a dashboard, so families who want to make sure that those services are available would be able to use that as part of the school report card system?
Well, I would think the percentage of school population that are differently abled in terms of their learning, because it's not really disabilities as much as it is differently abled, have that information on the dashboard, in addition to how the SEL, social emotional learning practices, or the practices that the school employs in their school. Because again, the dashboard is a glimpse perhaps of what's going on within the school. And so for the parent who has a child or children that are differently able to see that, there's focus on, oh, hey, here, they care about the number of people who are differently abled children attending the school, in addition to social emotional. Let me find out what's going on the SEL side. The parent might think, because I see my child is represented on the dashboard, as opposed to just a summative rating.
That's helpful.
Tell you what's going on.
Yeah, I'd love to work with you on that as we move forward on both the boundary study and on the dashboard. So thanks for everyone's testimony tonight. I really appreciate you coming down tonight.
Thank you. Vice President O'Leary.
Thank you so much, ladies. I'm a parent, but all my children are past school-age children, but I wouldn't be able to pick a school from our panel at all, because everything you said was what the report card should be and what the report card isn't. All right, I just want to mention a couple of things. All of you mentioned something. So Ms. Henderson was talking about the full child. The report card doesn't have anything to do with the full child. And that's what we need to do when we're evaluating a school, is what does the school do for every single child in that building to make that child better at the end of the year. That's the report card. Ms. Miles, you were talking about making our children become well-rounded adults, right? That's what a school is for. Y'all were talking about your experiences when you were in school, and you've become well-rounded adults, obviously, but it's also, but that's not in the report card. Yeah. It doesn't show you that. Ms. Rouse, you were talking about your experience in high school, how wonderful it was, all right? It made you what you are today, all right? But this report card doesn't do that. We have to have a report card that shows what the school is. Ms. DuBose, you were talking about humans. We're trying to create humans from little pre-K children to 18 or 19-year-old adults who are graduating from high school. That's what we want to come out of our schools. And the report card has to evaluate how we do that. And I saved Ms. Francis for last, because my last year at Cardozo, with the last 2 years, but especially the last year, we were one of the few restorative justice schools in the city that was successful. And we took our whole senior class with restorative justice and almost graduated everybody. And the whole school worked on that. But the report card that year said Cardozo was a one-star school because the park scores were so low. All right? Wherever they put the summative score, maybe on a margin of a page or something like that, or something that might hide it. I don't know why it needs to be on there. All right? But the report card should do what a report card does. What do we have at the end of the year? Did we pass or fail? And the report card should judge all the humans in the building so that they become functional adults. I know I used my time for that, but y'all gave me all the answers. Thank you.
President Thompson.
I'll be brief because I have a question. I heard testimony about the value of SEL, and I heard testimony about the value of restorative justice. I'm curious if you all were designing a section on a report card that showcased those things, like how do we measure that? How could we showcase that? Like, what would you do to design something that would show us what schools are doing around either one of those topics?
They would meet with whoever the expert is and create milestones or specific places they can meet to get to whatever their goal is by the end of the school year, and evaluate how many milestones that scholar has hit.
And I think if I understand the question, I'm thinking about comments from students who have benefited from SEL and from restorative justice practices, and links to perhaps quotes coming directly from students who have benefited from those programs, which is currently not a part of the report card.
And I know that what we're doing is we're working on space, furniture, a place, like a space for the students to actually go to. We have the 2 people, and they're starting to connect. So our whole thing is getting the space ready for them, and then they will make a curricula by communicating and collaborating with teachers, counselors, like getting everybody involved. I believe that's the way they would, handle that.
Also, I think while we can, think of different measures, when are we as educators or as board members or as people who are the people that are making these standards for these report cards, when are we actually consulting with experts in this work that are actively doing that now? Like, we have Dina Simmons, we have Zaretta Hammond that talk about neuroscience and how that connects to the students succeeding, and it goes beyond just, are we making them feel comfortable in school? And so when are we actually utilizing the people that are doing the research right now to support making these measures?
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions. I would like to thank each of you for your testimony and coming and being with us today.
Thank you all so much. We're going to call the next group of public witnesses.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Pena, Allison Rice, Kelsey Salvo, Dita Morales, Dallas Cherry Jr., Sarah Cole, Laura Fuchs, Scott Goldstein, Vincent Fedorko. Taisha Andrews. Thank you all. We will start with Ms. Morales here and go down.
Is this on?
Yes.
Great. I don't do this very often. Members of the board, my name is Dieter Lehman Morales, and I am a 10th grade social studies teacher at Columbia Heights Educational Campus in Ward 1. I'm also a proud Washington Teachers Union member. I'm here before you today to express my deep concerns and reservations regarding the proposal from OSSE to continue using summative scores on individual school report card pages. As a dedicated public school teacher, I firmly believe that such a move would have detrimental effects on our educational system, exacerbating existing inequities, negatively impacting school funding and enrollment, and contributing to neighborhood and school segregation. Rather than relying on summative scores, I strongly advocate for a shift in focus towards the inclusion of categories on school report cards that matter most to parents and families, students, and educators. First and foremost, I implore the SBOE to consider the detrimental consequences of assigning summative scores to schools, whether in the form of a numerical rating or a star-based system. Both approaches have been proven to create a stigmatization of schools, which not only harms the reputation of these institutions, but also results in a downward spiral of enrollment and funding. Moreover, this practice deepens the divide in our neighborhoods and schools, perpetuating inequality rather than addressing it. It is our collective responsibility as members of the education community to ensure that we do not contribute to these inequities. On a more personal level, working at Czech, a predominantly Latino and Black school, I see how the multicultural nature of our campus enriches the lives and educations of our students every single day. I've witnessed the strides that have been made to center anti-racism, social justice, and global citizenship at the heart of our curriculum. And as of earlier this year, our school was accepted into the second DCXQ cohort, which will be transformative for Columbia Heights as a whole. None of this would be reflected in our current system, which deprives schools of the ability to define themselves beyond numbers that do not paint a full picture of their success. That being said, I acknowledge that you are all mandated to calculate a summative score on these school report cards for federal accountability purposes. By transparently displaying the summative score on My School DC and the school report card website on a separate page labeled Federal Accountability Data, we can clearly distinguish this information from other components of the report card and ensure that it is not mistaken for a holistic measure of school quality. The rest of the report card should prominently feature aspects that are indicative of a great school: positive school climate, teacher and leader retention, well-run education, specialized programming, student safety, parent and family satisfaction, and more. These elements provide a more holistic and meaningful view of the school's quality and its impact on students, while also providing transparency into what factors contribute to a school's federal accountability score, like test scores, attendance, and graduation rates. In conclusion, I urge the SBOE to exercise its authority over the categories and format of school report cards wisely and compassionately. Let us prioritize the values and aspects of education that truly matter, steering away from punitive summative scores that have the potential to harm our schools and communities. By doing so, we can take a significant step towards creating a more equitable, inclusive education system in DC. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I'm here today as a teacher in a school that has been given every negative label and name under the sun by a pernicious education reform-driven policies that would rather test, label, punish, and close schools rather than support them. Since Michelle Rhee began her tenure and through Farabee, schools have been opened and closed at alarming rates, and those decisions are largely justified using these labels. From DCPS to the charter sector, this damaging and standardized test-based system has done little to improve our students' outcomes and a whole lot of damage to school communities and stability. H.C. Woodson is in a building that not only gets labeled with negative ratings from OSSE and others, we're also in a building that does not get supported adequately by DGS. We have gone for a full month without a working elevator. This was a known issue that has been raised to DCPS and DGS since the summer, yet here we are, 1 month into school, and we have no working elevator. This affects our students and staff's access and ability to do everything we hope to do each year. It is hard not to link the overall treatment of schools east of the river and the justification of our treatment with low scores that people use to say our students do not deserve better treatment. It is all our faults. But I'm looking specifically at every person who has voted or supported the STAR report card and who might continue to do so. And those at OSSI, the DME, the mayor's office who perpetuate this toxic environment where school communities are devalued, where the relationships of teachers, students, and parents hold no value at all, where adults make decisions that impact children for their own benefit. It is time to change these metrics. It is time to do away with these ratings that do not improve anything for our schools that we supposedly want to help. What I see from my classroom is a district obsessed with measuring things in a standardized way. I see endless trackers and consultants and database systems all tied to the OSSI STAR report card's arbitrary metrics. I see adults who have built their entire careers on looking at the human beings in our schools as data points that are somehow bad or failing, and those of us who serve them as problems that need to be fixed. I see a bunch of Teach for America alumni who couldn't last more than 5 years teaching trying to tell me, someone who now has 17 years of experience, that if I just did this one little tracker and followed one more acronym or program in just this way, that everything would be better. Our students see our so-called leadership at their EdFest. They see that their little press conferences, they see them on their little all-star tours. Where they don't see district leaders is doing the work that actually helps the students in this city. Where don't they see them conducting the oversight that would not have allowed DCPS and this mayor to systemically disinvest in schools like Washington Met, depriving them of stability, adequate resources, and the real programming that would have given them a shot at being successful too? Or don't they see them demanding real investment, not some tiny little grant that barely does anything, fighting for equity and not equality, something these so-called leaders clearly don't understand at all? They don't see them following our students. It is time to change the STAR report card immediately.
Good evening. My name is Ty Andrews, and I'm a Ward 8 resident and proud parent of one child at Plummer Elementary and one at McKinley Tech. I'm also a parent leader with PAVE on the citywide and Ward 8 PLE boards, a Plummer LSAT member, and a McKinley Tech PTO committee member. Today, I'm testifying about DCPS renovations, DCPS administrative issues, and my priorities around safe passages. I testified before you all in the spring to inform you all of the much-needed renovations for Plummer Elementary. After a discussion with Principal Fuller last week, I now know that the building issues at Plummer have gotten worse. Plummer has been having ongoing HVAC issues since 2016. In 2019, it was so hot in the school that they had to move summer school to another location. Repairs for the HVAC system are always temporary, and some rooms have window AC units. In addition, Plummer has other remodeling and renovation issues. There is exposed piping in the stairwell and gym. They also have an electricity issue where they cannot get an electric marquee due to the inability to provide the appropriate power. There is limited storage in classrooms, which does not compare to newer schools. The model that was completed for Plummer, the remodeling that was completed for Plummer was done in one summer, which is unfair and unacceptable to the school community. It is challenging for Plummer to compete for enrollment with an older building. Next, the lighting is not bright on the first floor, and many of the offices do not have windows. Last, the cafeteria also needs to be remodeled. Based on these facts, I believe Plummer should be added to the list of schools on the DGS school modernization project. The entire school should be knocked down and a whole new school built. Next, you would expect the first year of school to be exciting for first-year students and their families, especially when they're accepted into the specialized school of their choice. This was not the case with my freshmen at McKinley Tech this year. Information on freshman orientation was sent last minute, so my family couldn't attend. Also, despite my son attending the summer bridge program on his first day of school, he was not in the McKinley Tech system. He was actually in the Eastern system, but we never included Eastern on the My School DC application, but somehow Eastern pulled all his information and enrolled him there. McKinley did not have a class schedule for my son. They couldn't provide him with a school ID because he wasn't in their system, and neither of us had access to the school announcement app because DCPS had not updated the family email address, although the new address had been provided over a year ago. My son came home frustrated the entire first week of school due to either not having a set schedule or not having his school ID or his schedule changing. Also, on the first few days of school, the students had to arrive on a staggered schedule because one of the x-ray machines was not working. My son had to be at school at 7:45 in Ward 5, traveling from Ward 8 on public transportation. This is a long, dangerous route, and I have to stop here because my time is up, although I had one last point.
Good evening, distinguished guests and members of the board. I'm delighted to share my thoughts on what it takes to create outstanding schools here in the District of Columbia. I'd like to encourage everyone to take a moment to envision a treasure map. However, in this scenario, there are no predefined routes or directions. The map is blank, and you have a general idea where you want to go, but no clear path to get there. As you embark on that journey, you begin to document, draw, and fill in that map, detailing every encounter you find along the way. The more experiences you accumulate in life, the more intricate that map becomes. I've come to realize that each person's map is unique, shaped by their individual journey. As a young man who found his educational path through schools in New York City and Philadelphia, I recognize that many students, especially those with backgrounds like mine, are handed directionless maps and left to navigate independently, and it was my own map that led me to become an educator. As an educator in the District of Columbia, my mission centers on providing high-quality, equitable access to education for all students. However, I acknowledge that I often face challenges in achieving this goal due to resource and funding constraints. I vividly recall my first year teaching science here in the district. I was enthusiastic about sharing my passion for the sciences, but my excitement was quickly tempered by the realization that our school faced severe shortage in science supplies. The sciences were not a primary focus because they were not tested subjects. And this presented a significant hurdle. Despite this setback, my school responded to my concerns by granting me full autonomy to procure supplies and equipment in my role as a department chair. With this opportunity, I organized and hosted my school's inaugural neighborhood STEM fairs and expos. And during this event, I witnessed countless students who otherwise were overlooked due to their circumstances shine brightly. Several students mentioned that they wanted to go to school for engineering because of the STEM fair. Gradually, students' treasure maps I found started to reveal more intricate details. I work at a school that consistently provides resources through programs like our Community Eats initiative, where our students and staff members engage in community service. Additionally, our school offers transformative college-style residential housing programs for our students. We also provide mentoring opportunities through programs like Ride Through It, which has empowered students to persevere through life's most challenging obstacles. Regrettably, the current system's metrics for evaluating school success does not account for life-changing experiences like the ones I just highlighted. This omission may inadvertently prevent students from further enriching their individual treasure maps as they navigate their educational journeys. Consequently, I respectfully request that you reconsider the inclusion of summative scores or star ratings on school report cards, as these can negatively impact school enrollment and funding to some institutions. I implore you to consider a more holistic approach to evaluating schools based on indicators such as specialized program, parent and family satisfaction, and availability of extracurricular and curricular activities.
Good evening. Agape, the Greek term for unconditional love. Mr. Rogers used to say it was the key to all learning. He believed that close relationships, caring relationships could help accelerate learning. That's what I saw when I walked into Roosevelt's Day this morning at 8:10 and was greeted by a front office staff like I've never seen before. It's the thing I experience in schools that I go to all across the district. We know relationships are the absolute essential building block of school success, but there's no indication of how well schools do this on a school report card. You've heard tonight about how a school's restorative justice program can help keep students safe. You've heard about how a school's multicultural focus can help students feel included. You've heard about how strong adult relationships can keep students alive. You've heard about how the concept of good schools can lead students to schools that erase their history or deny their identity. Yet all these things that we know matter to students and families fail to show up on the current school report card. While I believe that you agree that our current school report card is failing our students and our community, I'm not sure that you all agree that you hold the power to turn that around. Within our DC's education system, it's true that the State Board has limited authority in some areas, but the authority you have on this issue is not small. In fact, the decision you make here has expansive impacts on equity for students and communities, school segregation, housing segregation, opportunities students have in school, and so much more. When you choose to prioritize, will impact what schools and LEAs choose to prioritize. This decision is hugely consequential. I want to walk through a set of critically important and interconnected facts. 1, OSSE clearly stated in your September working session that in fact the State Board does hold the authority to approve both the categories and format of the school report card. 2, currently there is no summative score being reported on school report cards. The only previously SBOE approved way to report a summative score is the old star rating, yet how OSSE has pledged to the Department of Education and the State Board to no longer use that star rating. Therefore, if you do not approve a new form of summative score, there cannot legally be one. The power is in your hands. OSSE has argued at the working session it would not be transparent to produce a summative score for federal accountability purposes but not display it on school report card pages, and it would be inequitable to put this data on a spreadsheet. This is a false choice. The data can be easy to read and access part of the website, just not on the individual school report card pages. We know lagging indicators exacerbate inequities while leading indicators can help produce equity. Displaying a score made of lagging indicators on a school's profile will exacerbate inequities in DC education. Whether the categories and format you approve promote equity or inequity is your choice. If your goal is for this tool to be a support for schools, there is only one vote that can achieve that. A vote against a summative score and for holistic indicators aligned with student and family interests. Our lead organizer, Caroline Pryor, conducted an extensive review of all 50 state report cards. I want to highlight that 24 states do not include a summative score of any kind on individual school report cards. My extended testimony has much more about what all the other states are doing. I'd be happy to answer more questions about that. Thank you.
Thank you all for your testimonies. We will now go to a round of board member questions, starting with Representative Henderson.
Thank you all very much. Mr. Goldstein, you probably heard Dr. Grant say there would be a survey about the report card. Could you speak to why the report card is important to teachers and how we might make sure that we reach them in the survey as well, engagement?
Yeah, so I've been a teacher and I'm also a parent, so I wear both hats. And I want to say that there's been a lot of talk about the usefulness of the report card to parents. It is also used by teachers. Teachers choose what school they're going to teach at, and people look at those ratings and those report cards when choosing what schools to teach at. So it impacts teacher quality as well. And when you think about what kind of specialized programs are offered, what kind of curriculum is offered, I heard people talk about how could we measure things like restorative justice programs. You can measure whether a school has a program. You can measure how many staff are dedicated to the program. You can measure how many staff are dedicated to social emotional learning, the size of the behavioral health team. So there are measurable metrics, and those are used by teachers as well as parents and families.
Thank you. Ms. Andrews, would you like to make your last point?
Sure.
You've got 2 minutes.
I ended saying that my son had to travel from Ward 8 to Ward 5 on public transportation. This is a long and dangerous route for a child, which leads me to my last issue, safe passage. Public transportation safety has deteriorated over the years. No one pays their fare anymore. Children and women with strollers take over handicapped seats, and people play loud, derogatory music and smoke cigarettes and marijuana on Metro. This is not a safe environment in general, let alone for a child, especially when you consider all the other issues that Metro has. On September 12th, my children had a dental appointment. My youngest son takes the school bus through OSSE to and from Plummer. So I called to cancel his morning transportation that day. However, the bus still showed up. And then the next day, we never saw the bus. So I called the representative, and they informed me that they did come and that they would not be sending another bus because my son was not ready. I ended up calling out of work that day because I knew I had to take him to school on public transportation, which is draining. From, of course, going from Ward 8 to Ward 7. We had to catch 2 buses to get to his school. We were already running late and the bus stopped 15 minutes away from the school. The bus driver and trainee got off the bus and did not say anything. All the passengers on the bus looked confused. After about 5 minutes, I stepped off the bus to ask what was happening, and they said that they were on break and waiting for relief. I explained to them that I understood they have a schedule to abide by, but proper customer service would have been to inform the passengers before just stopping the bus and getting off. I had to call an Uber to get my son to school because their relief never showed up. In closing, I would like to ask that you consider producing a plan to speak with the necessary agencies to rectify or at least address the issues that I've presented today. And I can also make myself available to provide further details on any of the information I've provided. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Representative Patterson.
Thank you, Director. I'll try to make this quick and First of all, I believe it was Mr. Morales. Thank you for your suggestion on if we're doing a summative score, how we could possibly show that. I really appreciate your suggestion, and we'll literally talk more with Ossie about that suggestion about when you talked about the summative score. So thank you so much. Ms. Fuchs, I know you've been here since day one. We served on a task force together. So I truly appreciate your depth of knowledge, your experience, your background around the report card. I definitely hear you when you talk about the issues with the report card, and definitely want to follow up with you as we can do this so we can do better than what we did last time, and that we won't have to have the report that you and I had to sit next to and make in front of this board. Okay, so thank you so much. Mr. Goldstein, I just wanted to say, as far as not voting for one part of the report card, the summative score, I don't believe that's allowable. It's because it comes as a package. You can't just dissect and take out the summative score and say, I'm not going to vote for the summative score, but I want you to vote for the report card that we put together, that we decided to put on. I believe we would revert back to what we had before. The reason we don't have a summative score at the current time is because we asked for an allowance to not have one during this time coming after the pandemic. So I don't believe you're correct in saying, okay, don't vote for a summative score, because I don't think that's truly possible. Now, I could follow up on that, but I don't think that's possible. Go right ahead.
Yeah, my point was if you voted against the entire proposal, there wouldn't be one, as there isn't one currently. I hear what you're saying, but the old SBOE approved thing, there is something now approved under ESSA that we've reported to the Department of Education that we're no longer going to use stars. So they might find another way, but
Right.
that's something they
Right, we did say that we weren't going to use stars anymore, that we're going to find another way, but there's also in that approval that went to the Department of Education that there would be a summative score. So you can't say you're not going to do what you did before, well, what you voted on and approved on last time. So I just wanted to make sure there's some clarity in it, and we can talk about it more, but I just wanted to make sure that you can't just take the summative score out and say, because you're going to revert back 2 stars, just so you know. You would revert back to the old report card if you don't approve a new revised report card this time around. That's what you're going to revert to, okay?
Yeah, we can talk about that more.
Right, okay.
Mr. Lehman
Just wanted to be
Morales proposed that it's on a separate tab. It's still on the school report card, but it's on a separate tab, which is one of the things
And I
we
love
suggested.
that.
Yeah.
And to my fellow Ward 8 person, definitely hear you. I want to talk to you more. I don't have but 20-something seconds, but want to follow up with you. I just don't get how you can get approved for McKinley Tech and then your child get all their information go to Eastern because it's an elective school and what you had to go through, and then about the DGS issues for both schools, for Woodson and for what you're talking about at Plummer. We'd just like to follow up with you when I have time.
Thank you. Representative Reed.
Good evening. Thanks for being here. So my question is, I want us to kind of tease out 2 things so that I don't interpret what you're asking as the same. I want to ask about the school profile, which is the individual school level reflection of what may be happening in a school building. And then I'm going to ask you about the DC school report card, which is a statewide reflection of how DC is making school conditions. Okay. So my question, and I think we can do all 5, is what conditions should the state be responsible for and reflect on its state level landing page, and what should be on the school profile that reflects what may be happening in the building? And Ms. Andrews, I'm going to start with you, please.
I'm sorry, I'm going to need you to repeat the first part.
Yeah. You got state level report card, school profile. What do you feel should be at the state level reflected, as a city should take responsibility for, and what should be your things about like school level?
I definitely think that the city should take responsibility for building services, for the deteriorating buildings, the schools that need to be remodeled. I also think that the city needs to take responsibility for the teacher retention rate, because I believe that if they were training more properly, then more teachers would stay. Back in the 80s and 90s, there were teachers who stayed at the same school for 20 and 30 years and taught the same families for generations, but we're seeing that that's not happening anymore. We're seeing more and more people from out of the state coming in, taking the teacher jobs and then leaving right away or moving to another school, another state. As far as the DC report card, I would say that that needs to definitely include information on how the school is progressing as a whole, as well as what others have said previously, that it needs to basically provide information on how the school is developing the students as a whole. Because if the school isn't properly developing the students, then they shouldn't even have a rating, to be honest. Ratings should not be based on test scores. It should really be based on how the school raises the child as a whole and teaches the child as a whole.
Thank you. We got 30 seconds, so somebody. I like that piece.
I would just go with like funding. So on the state level, we should be seeing the funding that goes into the actual schools, not being stolen by central office. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll just quickly echo the comments about having the state be responsible for building maintenance. And something that I want to highlight real quick by the time runs out is that we're facing a climate emergency. So I think this is something that climate resiliency should also be one of these things that the state is responsible for as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We're going to go to Representative Williams.
Yep. Thank you all for your testimony. Mr. Morales, I also like the idea of displaying the summative score on a separate landing page, and that's something that I'll continue to advocate for and work with my committee chair on as this progresses. Mr. Goldstein, you had said, I like highlighting the false choice around transparency, and I feel like transparency is kind of being used as a cudgel in this regard. Can you say the part of your testimony that you didn't get to, or what other states are doing around this, and kind of how we can really frame this as a choice around equity?
Yeah, it's a funny argument they're making, because the more information you give is more transparent, less information is less transparent. So giving a summative score is dramatically less information than providing a holistic measure that doesn't add them up and determine what's important for them. So it'd be more transparent to provide the holistic indicators. And states do that. 24 states do not include a summative score of any kind. It was kind of insinuated earlier that this would be groundbreaking for us. 24 states don't do a summative score, so we would be mainstream there. Many states have a school highlights section, so there's a tab that is just what the school wants to report about themselves. I think that's really important. Missouri lists disproportionate rates of access to experienced educators, in-field educators, and effective educators. Illinois, among other states, prominently displays teacher retention. Kentucky has a tab on school safety that lists incidents by how they were resolved, which is useful for determining whether a school used restorative measures or they used punitive measures. There's a whole lot more. We have all 50 states listed and the features they use, which align to the 6 things that we've called for being on there, which are academics, specialized programs, climate, educators, safety, well-rounded education, and the schools being able to report their own data, which a lot of states do.
Thank you. And I see that too, right? Like, we can have transparency and we can have equity, but not in the way it's being currently defined. So we have to be clear about this not being a measure of school quality. And then with my remaining minute, Ms. Andrews, you had mentioned just the idea of like a plan for safe passage, that if you were just to name like, the top 3 indicators that would be a part of like improving safe passage in transportation, like, given everything that you've gone through these past school year and years, like what would be at the top of your list?
So I know that, of course, you all can't control Metro, but Metro definitely needs to up their security, police and security on the trains and the buses. But I think that DC should get into the habit of doing what Maryland does. School buses for all kids to be transported to school, because that will definitely alleviate the issue of our students being on public transportation with adults who could possibly harm them. Because there are stories of children being beat up, shot, and sexually harassed by adults, and nothing is being done. So if DC can adopt something where the children are being transported to school through OSSI or through the DC public school system and not Metro, that would be great. So those are my 2.
Thank you. Representative Goulet.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I was thinking the same thing Representative Patterson was. Commissioner Morales, thank you for kind of describing how you would have that dashboard there. I think that makes so much sense of having it as one component of it, but one of many components that parents are interested in. And I think that's a really helpful suggestion on how we can portray that as part of what the whole school is about, not just one score. So I think that's, if you would work with us on how you would visualize that and how you think it could be useful, I think that would be really helpful to us as we look to, have a dashboard that's useful to parents and gives an accurate depiction of the whole school. So thank you for sharing that with us today. I want to just briefly mention what you said, Ms. Andrews, about the issues of transportation. I think we're tracking OSSI week by week on how they're doing better with transportation this year, and their overall numbers have been much better. Not to discount, though, your individual experience with it, because there have been a few bad experiences, here or there that we've got to do better on. I think what concerns me with this is the staffing numbers overall that OSSI has are lower than when we got this out from under the court receivership under Gilmore. And what my fear is that once we get back to cold and flu season, we're going to be right back where we were before if we don't have enough coverage. So I'd just like to, if OSSI is listening to this, encourage them to continue those hiring fairs and make sure we have an adequate number of drivers so that when people do get inevitably sick this winter, we're not going to have students across the city then having late or missed routes. And just a couple things that Ms. Fuchs mentioned and you mentioned, Ms. Andrews. I would like to try to kind of re-energize what we were looking at for facilities. Like the fact we haven't renovated Plummer to the degree you're speaking about is terrible. And back in 2006, they did the Comprehensive School Modernization Financing Act. And the goal was that every student going into school saw that the adult leadership in the city respected that student, cared about their education because they went into a school that was modernized, clean, safe, and attractive. And when our kids don't go into those environments, they don't feel like we care about them. And I think it's been now nearly 20 years since we passed that legislation, and the fact that Plummer and some other schools still aren't in an acceptable condition needs to change. And we've got this master facilities plan that we're going to be doing this fall, only 3 months left on it. So I would encourage you and others, we've got to get passionate about this, and we should see every school that isn't at a level that we feel is acceptable in that master facilities plan being approved in December. So I'd love to work with you on Plummer, and then there's schools across the city in similar shapes. So we should see all of that reflected in the master facilities plan, and we shouldn't take no for an answer on it. Thank you. That's fantastic to hear. Thank you so much for all coming out tonight.
Vice President O'Leary.
The report card doesn't reflect what Plummer looks like, or what Whittier looks like, or what the schools that haven't been renovated looks like at all. And that's a crime. They should have been fixed. Now, we're lucky in Ward 4 in that almost all of our schools have been renovated. But for those schools that haven't been renovated, and I, as you know, came from Cardozo, and it took us, we got pushed back and pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. But people still came because it was a neighborhood school, and their mother went there, or their grandmother went there. And that's what is the beauty of our school system in D.C., is that people want to go to the school in spite of the fact that the air conditioning doesn't work, or that the gym is falling down, or whatever. But that shouldn't happen. And so that the report card also doesn't reflect the population of the students. All right? Mr. Morales is at Czech, which is like, and Cardozo is like Czech, all right? Cardozo had about 30 or 40% students who were identified as special ed, and had almost 50% of the students who were ESL students. None of that was reflected on the report card. All right, and the Park test took us back to where Cardozo would never get another star, but people still came. All right, so what we want to make sure that we do with this report card is that it reflects the whole of the building. It's a holistic definition of what is happening in that building with all of the adults and the children in the building. The DGS problem is something that is starting to be rectified, hopefully. Next public meeting or working session, Director Hunter will be a guest and will listen to us talk about what DGS is doing or what they're not doing. I appreciate everything that you have to say. I think what we think about the summative score is almost the same thing as what you think, I hope. Oh, I've got musical accompaniment. Thank you so much.
President Thompson?
So I don't forget to do it before I run out of time. I want to thank everybody for their testimonies this evening. I do want to focus on the facilities concerns, mostly because we will have a bunch of engagement about the report card, and those tend to be urgent. So both Ms. Fuchs and Ms. Andrews, I don't see you all's testimonies in the Dropbox. I know, Ms. Fuchs, yours was not only on the facilities concerns. I'm asking for them because I would like them to attach them to the running email I have with DGS and DCPS about facilities concerns. Whatever you all have, whether it's, and the more detailed, the better. Tell me how many classrooms. Tell me if you know the work orders. Tell me how long the problem has been going on. Tell me everything that you know or you think I need to know, because it makes it easier for me to track and rectify the things. And it is literally an ongoing conversation via email I have with DGS and DCPS about this. So I don't know if there's anything else that you all want to put on the record tonight about the facilities things, because our staff does a wonderful job of taking notes, which makes it a little bit easier for me. And then I can follow up, and I would like to send my next email sooner rather than later, because Plummer is my school in every sense of the word. I went there for pre-K to 5th grade. My pre-K teacher just retired 2 years ago. My mom and I had the same gym teacher, and we had the same 1st grade teacher, and we had the same 3rd grade teacher. So it pains me that my school has not been fully modernized, and it's been in every budget letter I have ever written since the beginning of me writing budget letters, and it will continue to be. I cannot make elevator parts, but I can continue to say, hey, where's the timeline on the arrival for the elevator parts for H.G. Woodson? I don't know if there's anything else immediate, because last time I visited Woodson, the elevator was not the only thing that I had a concern about. So if there are other immediate facilities things, let me know. Just shoot me an email, and I will add it to my running list of DGS things.
I will get updated information from the principal on specific areas of the school, and I'll email you.
Okay. I'm also happy to text both principals. I do that too. But I tend to not like to say principal so-and-so, right? So let me know. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all for your testimony this evening. We welcome you all to come back and testify at any time of our public meetings. Now we will have our next panel of witnesses. Elizabeth Reddick. Fari Trumpe. Latia Loring. Dana Richard. Ruth Wattenberg. Is there anyone who did not get an opportunity to testify as a public witness who would like to do so? Please come to the table at this time. Okay, go right ahead.
Good evening, State Board of Education representatives. My name is Elizabeth Reddick, Ward 7 resident, parent of 5. I'm testifying today on behalf of my family, especially my SPED student. We rely on OSSI to provide transportation both during the year and extended school year. I myself am a divorced single mom and sole proprietor of a small business. I have very small contracts and I'm not receiving EBT benefits, so I don't qualify for WMATA lifts benefits. This has become an extreme burden on us financially because not only am I missing working opportunities, I'm choosing between getting him to school and feeding him many weeks. I originally came here to comment about transportation, but after hearing the testimony and questions on the school report card panel, additional concerns have risen. These discussions are very much from a white lens. Things that I have to consider are what time does before and after care open and close so I can work. The middle and working class, the people that run and service this city, are choosing between taking their children to school and working. We have a truancy problem and lapse in safety because we have a child care issue. Where do kids go when they are suspended? What does that look like? That's what I need to know on a school report card. How do schools manage grief and loss? I don't want to see that they provide SEL services or restorative practices, but how does that actually show up in decreasing truancy, violence, suspensions, learning loss, much like an IEP report card would? Impact is what we value. Time and time again, economic disparities show up in our lives and hinder our access to a free and equitable education. I ask you to consider my position as a mother who became an entrepreneur so she could better support her child during COVID. But now that we are in person, I am back to no longer being able to provide due to unreliable transportation that can be hours late or not show up at all. This boils down to a child care issue. How do you all plan to assist families like mine that continue to fall behind because we lack resources? Thank you.
You can go, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Is the mic on? Yeah. Thank you. Good evening, board members, and thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of SR 2310 on sponsorship of DCPS girls varsity wrestling. Very timely. I'm Dana Richard, a DC resident, parent, and chair of the DC Mayor's Advisory Committee on Developing Girls Scholastic Wrestling Programs. This was created in the spring of 2022 after it was discovered DCPS had not budgeted for the girls' teams or planned for the girls' teams in DCPS' newest girls' sport. And so thank you for bringing this historic resolution to a vote at an appropriately rapid pace. SR 2310 will provide a fair shot to DC students, especially female student athletes. DCPS girls sports in particular have historically faced deficits in funding and programming. 3 sports, wrestling, swimming, and lacrosse, were reinstated in DCPS following passage of and in connection with a local Title IX bill, the DC Athletic Equity Act. Wrestling was added to middle schools in 2017 and to DCPS high schools in 2022. It was initially planned by DCIAA as a girls' sport, and for good reasons. Wrestling is the fastest growing girls' sport in U.S. high schools and colleges, according to reliable sources, including the National Federation of High Schools. Wrestling was one of the few sports where participation rates for girls increased during the pandemic, growing by approximately 50% from 2018 to 2021, and again growing by 50% from 2021 to 2023, reaching 50,000 female U.S. high school wrestlers in 2023. And it's on its way to being one of the most popular girls' sports, as it has been among boys' sports for as long as there have been sports. Okay. Bottom line, when wrestling is adequately funded, planned, and promoted as a girls' team sport in a public school system, including inner city schools, the girls know they don't have to wrestle boys to participate, and the number of participants skyrockets. as much as tenfold in just one season, and that occurred in Oklahoma City Public Schools. Consistent with the DC Athletic Equity Act of 2015.
Thank you, sir.
Can I have 20 seconds?
No, sir. Sorry. We will now go to the round of member questions.
Okay.
We're going to start with Representative Henderson.
Okay.
You can have 20 of my seconds. You can go ahead and finish.
Okay.
Go ahead and finish your testimony.
Okay. Consistent with the DC Athletic Equity Act of 2015 and federal Title IX, DCPS girls wrestling teams must be sponsored and adequately funded independently from the boys' co-ed wrestling teams, just like in basketball, with their own coaches, weight classes, competition schedules, travel, allowances, and uniforms. In their inaugural high school season, they didn't have any of this, so it should be corrected. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Reddick, there are definitely other categories have been on the report card in the past, and I'm sure will be included in the future. But could you just say again some of the things that you think are important to be on there? You said aftercare, before care.
So I spoke about aftercare, before care, but I also spoke about how not just that a school provides SEL or restorative justice practices, how does that show up? So we need to see the impact, because as was heard earlier, it's not enough just to have this program or this certification. How does that affect the numbers as far as truancy goes? How does that affect suspension? How does that affect learning loss? Because a lot of our kids' learning loss are actually SEL losses, not necessarily just reading and mathematics. Kids don't have those skills, those tools anymore because of COVID. And those are the things that we need to catch up on, because if a child's not ready to learn, then they're not going to be able to perform academically, and their test scores aren't going to go up. And we have no way to measure that. So looking at, my child's school that he went to during the COVID, they actually progressed a lot school-wide. But most schools did not have that experience. So it's like, what was the difference? You wouldn't know that because based off of the report card right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it would be great to be able to measure those things better than we do right now. I'm not sure. It'll probably take more than the report card to do that. But I think those are worthwhile questions.
But also, like I said, if it was more individualized, like I don't know if you guys have ever seen an IEP report card. It's very different than a standardized report card. And so if it was more individualized to evaluate the progress of that particular school, not necessarily district-wide.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Patterson.
Thank you, Director. Ms. Reddick, always, thank you. I love my paid parents. I love how passionate you guys are. Thank you so much. Those are things that I will take with me, and as I meet with our chair and with OSSI, we'll make sure that we bring up so that we amplify that voice.
Thank you.
Okay? Mr. Richard, congratulations. Thank you for coming in front of us. I know this is not your first time, and you've stayed the course, so I look forward to saying yes when that resolution comes before me. I just appreciate you always making sure there's equity in athletics, that we're following Title IX, and doing the things that we need to do for both groups of our athletes, our student athletes. So thank you.
Thank you for having us. And I just wanted to comment that the DC State Board of Education was, I think, very much involved, and the Superintendent of Education, in bringing back these three girls' sports: wrestling, swimming, lacrosse. And so thank you for that.
May
Thank
I
you.
say something?
You sure, may I?
Okay,
You have a whole
so-
minute and 55 seconds, almost 2 minutes.
So I wanted to add the reason that I mentioned the IEP was because sometimes when schools are quote unquote failing, they're never really given an opportunity or a realistic opportunity to be evaluated. So I think that that should be in addition to. So instead of just putting a school up for, like, on probation, for example, or saying, okay, this school is going to close because they're not performing. By having that individual plan, you can see that progress, because a lot of times that progress happens, but nobody gets to see it.
Right.
It just closes. And I think that's doing a disservice not only to the population that those schools serve, because it's usually underserved communities.
Right.
So I just wanted to add that.
And I appreciate that because it also brings to the point that there's a differentiation between charters and traditional schools, that there's also accountability for charters where they're being somewhat, as we say, rated, they're tiered, so to speak, and they can be closed based on that tiering and things like that. So I appreciate you bringing that so that we can delineate that this report card is for all schools, but there's also a separate accountability plan that is in place for charter schools. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Representative Reed.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you both for being here. Ms. Riddick, I just really appreciate listening to your lens. So I'm just happy to hear how you view, what is most useful to see from a school, and not just say like this needs to be splattered here, but then what are the outcomes attached to it, or the impact of having, whatever program a school may have, or whatever resources are or are not thrown at it. So I'm just taking it all in. Thank you. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Yep. Thank you both for your testimony. Ms. Riggs, same thing. I appreciate kind of the continued push around like figuring out how we then support schools and not like make rash decisions to just closing them, but like have something where the whole school community can really be working together to improve those goals. And I think that sometimes gets lost in this that conversation. So thank you for highlighting that. And then, Mr. Shard, I wanted to kind of ask you briefly, like, are you concerned about continued equitable funding for girls' sports in DC, whether it be wrestling or any of the other sports that you named?
Well, in terms of sports generally, yeah, I mean, the DCPS sports have some of the lowest coaches' pay in the nation for most of the sports. And in sports like wrestling, swimming, lacrosse, it's so low that it's virtually impossible to have a coach, retain a coach, and have them stay for very long. And so, for example, in middle schools, the coach's pay is $800 per season total for all the coaches, and $812. And in Arlington, Montgomery County, it's closer to $6,000.
Yeah, I really appreciate you highlighting that. I didn't necessarily expect you to say that, but it also just rings close to home with my personal experience. So I'm the boys varsity basketball coach at the school that I teach at, and we were told previously that we were going to be paid one thing, and had used kind of the data from Arlington and Montgomery County and even PG County, in which coaches are paid way more, and we're frankly told, well, we're on par with other charter schools in DC, which is $250 more than what DCPS coaches are paying, and that doesn't even account for all the dozens, maybe even hundreds of hours that we put in. So it makes it hard to kind of continue to sacrifice that and nurture that passion in which coaches are pouring into students and helping make sure that they have something that they can look forward to. So I appreciate you underscoring that.
Yeah, I mean, even a few $1,000s can make a big difference for a typical coach. So.
Representative Goulet.
Well, I want to thank you both for testifying. I enjoyed our conversation, Mr. Richard. Congratulations to Vice President O'Leary and yourself on this great resolution today. And I'm so excited. I would be a strong advocate for saying to our young ladies to give a look at wrestling. As if you're looking at sports, you'll build confidence, core strength, team spirit. I mean, wrestling is a great activity that tests your mind and body. So I'm really excited that you're leading the charge on this, and hopefully we'll get a lot of interest from young ladies across the city to do this great sport. So thank you for that. I would like to echo what you and Representative Williams are talking about on school funding. I mean, that needs to be first. This budget cycle, the economy is tightening up in the city, and schools have got to be first. We've got to make sure that we're not seeing 5% cuts to our schools budget again this year, and it needs to be not where we're going to either choose between cutting, local school budgets by 5% or cutting the technology budget. There needs to be enough money in the budget overall to fund the full needs of our school system that are identified by the adequacy study, for one thing, but then also just by the individual principals and school community. And that money's then got to flow through to our coaches to make sure that we're paying our coaches a fair wage that's competitive with the region. So thanks for your leadership on that, and let's keep advocating for full funding for our schools. And then, Ms. Reddick, thank you very, very much for hitting on two subjects that I think are crucially important here. First is putting a real-world perspective on the consequences of OSSI not picking children up and not having reliable bus routes, is that it impacts your business. And we heard from so many residents about these concerns last year, and then we had a number of our ANCs across the city pass resolutions echoing those concerns, and the state board acted on this. So we really need to see with OSSI that, I'm sorry you had some individual experiences. I'd be glad to talk to you about those. We need to make sure that the on-time rates stay where they are right now as things get worse. And I know OSSI is probably listening to this. You got to make sure you got the staffing for the winter. The other thing you mentioned, which I thought was extremely, extremely important, is the need for childcare. Right now, Vince Gray, Councilmember Vince Gray, passed the Birth for All DC Act. The goal was eventually making sure child care is affordable and that no family has to pay more than 10% of their income on child care. And we've got to build capacity in our city, though. We should be an all-hands-on-deck approach through OSSI to work with places like UDC to make this a profession that our young people from high schools want to get involved with, where we're actually making building space available for facilities to want to open in our city. Because child care, as you mentioned, as a small business owner, is really a lifeline for you to be able to run your business. So thank you for raising those two issues, because I think you really spoke for a lot of people who face similar challenges in trying to balance family and work. So thank you very much for raising it.
Vice President O'Leary.
Ms. Reddick, I want to thank you for bringing up you were bringing up special ed, but also you mentioned failing schools, all right? We shouldn't have any failing schools. No school should be identified as a failing school. None of us as parents wants our children to be failures, all right? Maybe report card's not even the right word when we're evaluating our schools. But I want to thank you for, I know that they're listening, and maybe that we're going in the wrong direction as far as calling it a report card. It's an evaluation of where the school is and what's going on in that building. Thank you so much. Mr. Richard, as a coach who got no money for 40 years, I understand that completely. But coaches do it because they love coaching, all right? Could you just, for 1 minute, tell us about the junior high school girls wrestling program? How many schools and how successful it has been?
The middle school?
Yes.
The middle school wrestling programs, DCPS hired Diana Parente from the New York City Public School Athletic League to develop the girls wrestling teams. And New York City was involved in creating wrestling as a girls' varsity.
I'm going to interrupt you because you've only got 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
How many schools have teams and how have they been doing?
They had 8 teams in the first, in 2017 and 18, and they were pretty good size. They were mostly boys, but almost all the schools, including Johnson Middle School, they had 3-4 girls on the wrestling, but they had to wrestle boys, so the numbers didn't grow.
I come from a wrestling high school, as you know. And so I know all about how wrestling goes. When we pass this resolution, and hopefully in DCPS, it's just a resolution from us, but there's also something going to the city council, right? Mm-hmm. And if the city council passes that, then the funding is for a varsity girls wrestling, period, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
it will be a great investment. Huge scholarship opportunities. Marymount University in Arlington is the newest. It's the first DC consortium university with a women's NCAA wrestling. So we're starting this year. There'll be many more.
President Thompson.
Thank you both for coming to testify in front of us tonight. Ms. Riddick, I'm going to think about what you share. I saw you reading off of your phone. I know you changed up your testimony. I do encourage you to send us the testimony as we think about the, like, not just what questions we should be asking, but who we should be asking, who we're hearing from, and how we're using that information. So thank you for that. Mr. Richard, congratulations tonight. I will say that I was at a Civic Association meeting earlier this week, and I was telling people that they can always come testify before us as a board, no matter what is on our agenda. And I actually used the girls wrestling as an example because I said we had a gentleman who came and testified before us, and we looked into it, and it was a problem we could at least raise our voice to do something about. And now we are seeing that come to fruition as a resolution we are voting on and sending to the council. So I thank you for showing up in your advocacy, and I'm glad that we are able to be helpful and responsive in that regard.
Incidentally, 2 girls from Jackson Reed, it was Wilson at the time, testified at the DC Athletic Equity Act and demanded that the girls have their own wrestling teams, their own coaches and uniforms, etc. So that was, I think that was very powerful.
I think that is very powerful. I'm going to relinquish the rest of my time because I happen to have a fiance who has picked up a new sport to coach. So I do want to go home at some point and see people who are not elected to sit on the dais with me. So thank you all for your testimony. And I think you all are our last public witnesses this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you to all of our public witnesses for their comments tonight. We do sincerely appreciate it. If you testified this evening and did not send in your testimony, please do. We do look at those after the fact, and they are also uploaded to our website. At this time, we will move to the administrative votes for the evening. We have 3 state resolutions. I am going to look for a motion and a second for each state resolution, followed by Director Butler reading each into the record. Once the resolution is read into the record, we will have member discussion of statements before roll call votes are concluded. We will now move to vote on State Resolution SR 23-9, establishing bylaws and standard operating procedures working group. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I think I heard a so moved, a faint one. All right. Sounds like I heard Representative Goulet with making the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Representative Williams has seconded the motion. Director Butler will read the resolution into the record.
State Board of Education Resolution establishing a bylaws and standard operating procedures working group, SR 2309. Whereas in accordance with the District of Columbia Official Code bylaws for the District of Columbia State Board of Education were first established on October 7, 2007 by the Mayor of the District of Columbia. Whereas on February 16, 2022, the State Board adopted the current amended version of the State Board bylaws. Whereas the bylaws of the State Board govern how the agency operates and are periodically reviewed and amended with improvements. Whereas its February 1st working session of 2023, the State Board discussed amending its current bylaws and proposed establishing an ad hoc bylaws committee. Whereas at the February 15th public meeting, the State Board voted unanimously to adopt SR 23-1 on committee appointments, which created the Ad Hoc Bylaws Committee to revise existing bylaws and establish formal operating procedures. Whereas the State Board extended the tenure of the Bylaws Committee through June 30th, 2023, beyond its original deadline of April 26th, with the adoption of SR 23-3 on the creation of committees and appointments. Whereas the Bylaws Committee shared draft language and discussed bylaws amendments with members during working meetings and upon delivering the final draft to the Administrative Committee in July of 2023. A working group made up of State Board members and staff to finalize the bylaws and develop standard operating procedures was proposed. And whereas, in addition to finalizing the State Board bylaws, the working group would develop the standard operating procedures that guide the board's operations, support efficiency in technical processes and procedures, and provide further transparency to the public. Now therefore be it resolved that the DC State Board of Education shall create a bylaws and standard operating procedures working group comprised of the following members and staff: Frazier O'Leary, Vice President and Ward 4 Representative; Robert Henderson, Ward 5 Representative; Brandon Best, Ward 6 Representative; Bernice Butler, Executive Director; and Darren Fleischer, Senior Policy Analyst. And now therefore be it further resolved that the Bylaws and Standard Operating Procedures Working Group shall establish a final set of bylaws and standard operating procedures to be voted on by the State Board at the January 17, 2024 public meeting.
Thank you, Director Butler. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Okay. Oh, Representative Goulet.
Yeah, I'll just be very brief on this. I just want to thank my committee for their work on this. Representative Reed, Representative Bernstead, who's hopefully not watching this anymore because she's off to college at Harvard University, just for their hard work. I think we really got a lot done, have truly modernized the bylaws of the State Board. I'm excited that they're going to go next on sequential referral to Vice President O'Leary and the Administrative Committee. So you can, take our draft of this and build upon it. And I'm just really excited. I want to thank my committee members for their work on this, and I'm looking forward to what the Administrative Committee and this working group come up with next. So thank you so much, President Thompson.
All right, if no further discussion, I'm going to echo Representative Goulet's thanks, and I'm also going to thank the staff and the board members who have volunteered to take us to the finish line on this. So if there's no further discussion, the motion is to adopt SR 23-9, and Director Butler will call the roll.
Representative Williams?
Aye.
Representative Goulet?
Aye.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Reed?
Aye.
Representative Patterson?
Aye.
Vice President O'Leary?
Aye.
President Thompson?
Aye.
SR 23-09 on the establishment of bylaws and standard operating procedures working group passes.
Thank you, members. Next, we will vote on State Resolution SR 23-10, supporting DC Athletic Association sponsorship of girls wrestling. Is there a motion, Vice President O'Leary?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. A motion has been made by Vice President O'Leary and has been properly seconded by Representative Patterson. Director Butler will read the resolution into the record.
State Board of Education resolution supporting DC Athletic Association sponsorship of girls wrestling, SR 23-10. Whereas wrestling is considered one of the oldest interscholastic, intercollegiate, and Olympic sports, and is highly regarded extracurricular activities for developing students' fitness, athletic skills, and self-defense skills. Whereas according to the National Wrestling Coaches Association, wrestling is one of the fastest growing high school girls sports in the U.S., increasing from 804 girl wrestlers in 1994 to more than 50,000 in the spring of 2023. Whereas women's wrestling is a sanctioned sport by the National Association of Intercollegiate athletics is a burgeoning scholarship opportunity for U.S. girls and women, and as of 2023, 41 states hold official scholastic state championships for girls wrestling. Whereas a robust sports history and a rejuvenated passion for sports in schools, an important component for a well-rounded education and students' development of long-term fitness, nutrition, health, and teamwork skills. Whereas the District of Columbia Public Schools budget cut in 1992 led to the termination of wrestling and varsity competitions of the sport, forcing students who wanted to compete in wrestling to attend private or public charter schools that offered wrestling. Whereas to ensure gender equity within athletics for all districts' student athletes, DC Council passed the Title IX Athletic Equity Act of 2015, requiring all DC public and public charter schools to submit detailed information about their athletic programs to the District of Columbia State Athletic Association. Annually, local education agencies to designate a Title IX athletic coordinator, and each public and public charter school to designate a Title IX athletic liaison. Whereas, following the passage of the DC Athletic Equity Act of 2015, 5 DC DCPS middle schools adopted wrestling in the school years of 2017 and 2018. Although in 2022, 3 decades since wrestling was terminated due to city budget cuts, DCPS, in partnership with organizations like Wrestling to Beat the Streets DC and Wrestle Like a Girl, restored varsity wrestling to 8 DCPS high schools. Whereas in 2017, the DC Interscholastic Athletic Association planned on reinstating wrestling as a varsity sport in DCPS high schools in the 2019-2020 school year, including a girls' varsity sport. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, delays led to postponement of funding of boys wrestling in DCPS schools and no budget for middle and high school girls wrestling. Whereas in 2022, the Deputy Mayor for Education sponsored a high school sports review study, the purpose being to significantly upgrade DCPS scholastic sports programs and greatly improve the quality and competitiveness of DC high school sports. Whereas among findings and suggestions from the high school sports review study published in December of 2022, girls wrestlers are underrepresented and growth in the sport is inhibited by a lack of gender-specific teams and coaches. Stipends paid for DCPS and public charter school coaches should align with coaches paid in neighboring counties, i.e. Montgomery, Arlington, and Fairfax. Whereas in 2022-2023, the inaugural season of wrestling as a DCPS-sponsored high school varsity sports, DCIAA did not budget or plan for DCPS girls wrestling teams. And whereas the state board values equitable out-of-school time activities, including public and public charter school sports, to enrich all students' academic and extracurricular experiences in DC. Now therefore be it resolved that the DC State Board of Education calls on DCPS, DCIAA, and DCSAA to officially sanction and fully fund wrestling as a sponsored girls interscholastic sport in all DCPS middle and high schools that sponsors wrestling starting in the 2023-24 season. Therefore, be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be distributed to the DCIAA and DCSAA executive directors.
All right, Director Butler, is there any discussion on the resolution? Oh, that is a surprise. All right. Since there is no discussion, I am going to call for the vote. Director Butler will call the roll. I was ready to go all in favor, but Director Butler, roll call.
Representative Williams.
Aye.
Representative Goulet,
Aye.
Representative Henderson,
Aye.
Representative Reed,
Aye.
Representative Patterson,
Aye.
Vice President O'Leary,
Aye.
President Thompson.
Aye.
SR 23-10, supporting the Athletic Association sponsorship of girls wrestling, has passed.
Okay. Our final resolution for the evening is State Resolution SR 23-11, selecting Daniel Davis, our Chief Student Advocate, as representative to the School Safety Enhancement Committee. I'll actually move this resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Is somebody want to use the mic?
Second.
All right, Representative Reed with the second. Director Butler will read the resolution into the record.
State Board of Education resolution selecting Daniel Davis as a representative to the School Safety Enhancement Committee, SR 23-11. Whereas pursuant to the authority set forth in Title 4, Subtitle T of the fiscal year 2024 Budget Support Act of 2023, the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Education is in the process of forming a School Safety Enhancement Committee. Whereas the School Safety Enhancement Committee will meet monthly starting in October of 2023 and ending in January of 2024, with a final report developed by February of 2024. Whereas the School Safety Enhancement Committee shall review and recommend, among other issues, staffing structures to promote school safety, protocols for school engagement with government agencies such as the Metropolitan Police Department and the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency, and prevention and intervention approaches to promote youth safety. Whereas the School Safety Enhancement Committee will investigate cross-sector policy, budget, and needs, and discuss and identify solutions to persistent challenges to positively impacting the DCU safety landscape. Whereas the School Safety Enhancement Committee is seeking representatives who are knowledgeable about youth safety, can adopt a district-wide lens, are long-time district residents with an understanding of historical community violence in the district live and or work in safe passage priority areas, and have experience navigating district public schools as a student, parent, or guardian. And whereas the State Board is required to select a representative to join this committee. Now, therefore, be resolved that the DC State Board of Education selects Daniel Davis, a District of Columbia Public School alumnus, Ward 7 resident, and Chief Student Advocate of the Office of the Chief Student Advocate, to serve as a representative on the School Safety Enhancement Committee.
Is there any discussion? All right, so I'm going to start this way and work my way down. Representative Goulet.
Thank you, President Thompson. I want to speak in support of this nomination. I look forward to voting for it. I would like to put on the record just how important this is right now. I mean, the city right now is facing a crime crisis unlike some that we haven't seen since the 90s. Homicides are up. I've heard complaints from parents about children being in danger going to and from school. So I think this task force is really important. I'm excited to be able to see Mr. Davis talk to all stakeholders on this. I think we heard from principals across the city about how important the issue of SROs was. And the city almost made a huge mistake in eliminating SROs without a backup plan in place and without listening to our principals. So I really hope that, when Mr. Davis gets in there, he works with stakeholders to listen to everyone on this issue: students, teachers, principals, parents, and our police officers who serve our communities as SROs and then in the neighborhoods. I'll end with just one quick story that I heard from a parent on this, which I thought was incredibly powerful, speaking about the SROs and what they did for a student that was having a mental health issue that day. The SRO was aware of the issue. The student was out in the community and having issues related to his mental health condition that could have, if an officer had arrived unaware of the situation, could have potentially, brought this student into the criminal justice system. And fortunately, the SRO was able to be there, was able to interact with the student, talk the student to come inside and sit down and call the parents, because the SRO knew the community And I think I'm excited. I hope Mr. Davis then works very closely with Representative Patterson and Representative Best, who've done great work on this issue on the committee. And I'm excited to see the work that this will do to further the safety of our students in the city, because it's such an important issue at this time. So thank you for the nomination, and I look forward to supporting it today.
Thank you, Madam President. I look forward to really supporting our state advocate for the simple fact that he is well positioned to really get at the meat of what needs to be done about student safety. He is uniquely positioned in his position as a student advocate to hear from a plethora of people that really can speak to what really needs to be coordinated. As you know, we've had several panels on this particular issue. It is something that is near and dear, I believe, to every single member of the State Board of Education. And we want someone that can truly advocate, and is in his title actually, to do that for our families, for our teachers, for our communities. And he hears this on a regular basis. So I look forward to supporting him. I look forward to voting yes on this resolution.
Mr. Davis has a wealth of knowledge about these situations. He's been very helpful to us and to the city with his studies in other areas that have helped with formulating these kinds of resolutions. And I'd also like to mention that we could only choose one person, and there were several members of the board that would have liked to have been on the committee, but we could only choose, and I think we made the best choice.
All right, I want to both thank Mr. Davis because yes, his title is his job description, much like ours, to advocate for students, and students are at the core of this safety issue, and what we hope the solutions will be centered around. I also want to thank not only the members who raised their hands and volunteered for volunteering, but I want to thank them for the work they're going to do, because just because we have one person nominated does not mean the board will not continue to work on this issue. I am especially looking forward to the opportunity to work more closely with the Office of the Student Advocate around this issue and continue partnership. And I will say that I do think it was a bit of an oversight that their office was actually not carved out in the legislation. The reason we have people coming before us, talking to us about safe passage, so much of that work came out of the Office of the Student Advocate. And so I want to publicly recognize and thank them for that work. I look forward to the board continuing to be in partnership with them around this work. And I am looking forward to calling for the vote now on this resolution. So if there's no further discussion, the motion is to adopt SR 23-11, and I will have Director Butler call the roll.
Representative Williams?
Aye.
Representative Goulet?
Aye.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Patterson?
Aye.
Vice President O'Leary?
Aye.
President Thompson?
Aye.
SR 23-11, selecting Daniel Davis, Representative for School Safety Enhancement Committee, has passed.
All right, members, thank you for your time and attention to the expert witnesses, the public witnesses, the administrative votes this evening. Now is actually the time if there are any announcements or comments in new business people want to make before we adjourn. Representative Williams.
Yeah, very quickly, to anyone watching or for the board to know, there's an event this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. At the LAYC location on Columbia Road and 14th around bullying, student harassment, and student safety more generally. So I invite anyone who would like to attend. We have a great lineup, and want to continue this conversation about making sure that we're updating bullying policies both in DCPS and charter schools, and focusing on student safety more broadly.
May I make one announcement?
Yes, that's this time.
Thank you so much. So another announcement I'd like to make is just to remind parents out there who are interested in participating in either the school boundary process, which leads into the master facilities plan, that there's going to be 2 Deputy Mayor for Education events coming up on September 26th and 27th. Both are virtual events, but I think it's really important if you have issues that either affect the school facilities or the boundary process to make your voice heard, to sign up for those hearings, and to come out en masse, because these are important issues, and the Deputy Mayor needs to hear from you on what's important for the boundaries and for your schools.
All right, I would only add that the master facilities town halls are October 4th at 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. and October 5th, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Because since we've heard so much about facilities tonight, and that is the complementary process. Representative Patterson, you had an announcement.
Yes, I just want to announce one really fun event. The DC Public Schools Block Party is this Saturday. It will be at McKinley Tech, which is Ward 5. For Representative Henderson and everybody. We just look forward to seeing as many people as we possibly can out. Let's come out, let's support our schools, let's support our students. It's a fun time to have a block party. I've always enjoyed them, so look forward to doing it. So.
All right, so I will be traveling to Ward 5 this year. I was at Eastern last year. Any other announcements? All right, hearing or seeing none. Members, I think we are ready for the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, well, is there a second?
Second.
Just a second.
All right, there's a second. I did something wrong because I should also say thank you for the member. I mean, I need time. I'll do it after. I'll do it. Can I do it in discussion or no? I can't do that. I don't know. I'm messing up stuff, but it's okay.
I withdraw the motion to second, so now you can go do it.
Oh, perfect. All right, thank you. So what I am always supposed to say, because we want you to know, our next public meeting is October 18th. Our next public meeting is October 18th. Our next working session, which was mentioned this evening, is October 4th. So now there's no further business before the board. So in addition to thanking everyone, I guess I need to ask for you to make the motion again, Vice President Leary.
So moved.
Thank you. Do you want a second?
Sure, I'll second again. Second.
All right, perfect. All in favor of going home because we're sleepy, please say
Aye.
aye. Any opposed? All right. Unanimous. We are adjourned at 8:46 p.m. Thank you.